Chapter 212. Why would a martial progenitor be here? Ming Tongtian and the others wore pale faces. Their eyes were filled with despair. The difference between the peak martial god realm and the martial progenitor realm was only a slight difference, but the difference between their strength was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. The man in a blue robe was simply standing there, yet the pressure he was emitting was enough to immobilize them. This is going to be troublesome. The dragon spirit inside the ancient dragon seal wore a stern look. Previously at Luogui City, Qin Yu was able to resist Mo Le Huang, who was a second-layer martial progenitor. The reason being that Qin Yu had detonated the entire supreme-grade ghost vein in Luogui City into the formation. However, Qin Yu could only rely on himself to resist the martial progenitor realm cultivator. More importantly, even if Qin Yu were to be able to successfully escape, he would still be able to expose his hidden abilities. If that happened, he would be in even greater trouble. First-layer martial progenitor realm. Qin Yu glanced at the man in a blue robe as a thought crossed his mind. Even if Qin Yu had a teleportation formation ready, he would not be able to escape from a martial progenitor realm cultivator. During the battle at Luogui City, even though Qin Yu had trapped Mo Le Huang, the man still had ways to attack him. Even though the man in a blue robe only possessed a first-layer martial progenitor realm cultivation, he was even more troublesome than Mo Le Huang. The reason being that Qin Yu had no way of trapping him. Elder Qin, we'll hold him back. You should take the chance to escape. Ming Tongtian glanced at Qin Yu and transmitted his voice using a secret technique. The other 9 peak martial gods wore determined looks too. It was obvious that they were aware of Ming Tongtian's decision. They were the top elders of the 100-Beast Palace. They knew how terrifying a martial progenitor realm cultivator was. Even though Qin Yu was a sacred formation master, he was no different than an ant in the eyes of a martial progenitor realm cultivator. Instead of letting everyone die here, it was better to protect Qin Yu and help him escape. Qin Yu's cultivation was only in the Wu Sheng realm. Perhaps the man in a blue robe would not be too worried about Qin Yu. That way, Qin Yu would still have a chance of survival. The martial ancestor realm is not something that can be stopped by numbers alone. Qin Yu shook his head slightly. The worldly laws could easily suppress the profound meanings of heaven and earth. The two were not on the same level. Ming Tongtian and the others had completely underestimated the martial progenitor realm. If it was that easy to stall a martial progenitor. When he was in Luogui City, Qin Yu didn't have many backup plans, but he still almost couldn't escape. In this situation, if Ming Tongtian and the others cooperated with him and fought with all their strength, there might be some hope. However, if they split up, none of them would be able to escape. Although the hope is very slim, we still have to fight to the death. Elder Qin, if you can successfully return to the palace, I hope that in the future, you can take care of our clan members. After Ming Tongtian transmitted his voice using his secret technique, the demonic aura around him surged as he transformed into his demonic form. A dark nether cat that was about 10 feet tall and covered in black demonic patterns appeared in the air. The 9 top elders also revealed their demonic forms and stood in the air, their demonic aura shaking the heavens. You know that you can't escape this calamity, so you fought to the death. You have some backbone. The man in a blue robe wore a calm expression. A peak martial god, 9 top martial gods, and a Wu Sheng. He could easily crush them with his hands. Do it. A deafening roar took place as Ming Tongtian charged forward with a shocking demonic aura. Qin Yu was about to make his move when his expression suddenly changed. This is, I'll be taking the beast spirit. The man in a blue robe tapped his finger, causing the rift to tremble as the rules of the heavens and earth surged like a tsunami. Bang! The attacks from Ming Tongtian and the others were instantly shattered, leaving them with serious injuries. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The man in a blue robe's figure flickered as he was about to retrieve the beast spirit. Several formation flags descended from the sky. At that instant, a chaotic 5 elements formation over 100 zhong wide encapsulated the man in a blue robe. A sacred formation? The man in a blue robe raised his brows as he sensed the chaotic 5 elements formation. He glanced at Qin Yu in astonishment. Buzz buzz buzz. At that moment, The teleportation formation beneath Qin Yu's feet was activated. Trying to run? Forbidden heaven and earth. The man in a blue robe's eyes turned cold as the laws of the heavens and earth instantly covered the area. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly reverberated through the rift. Ming Tongtian and the others' souls were severely injured as they bled from their 7 orifices, their faces pale. Bang! Qin Yu was also attacked. His aura fluctuated as he spat out blood. The teleportation formation was also affected. It turned into a pillar of light that shot into the sky and disappeared. Hey! This kid! The man in a blue robe was even more astonished. Even Ming Tongtian, who was a peak martial god, had been severely injured or even killed by his attack. However, Qin Yu was only slightly injured. Whoosh! The azure dragon in Qin Yu's body dissipated as his true yuan swept through the air and brought back the unconscious Ming Tongtian and the others. Among the 10, 5 had already lost their souls. Ming Tongtian and the other 4 also had weak soul power. Even if they were peak martial gods, their souls would always be their weakness. If the physical body was severely injured, it could be healed with pills. However, if the soul dissipated, it would be too late. What's wrong? Are you thinking of saving them? The man in a blue robe looked down at Qin Yu with an indifferent gaze. I am indeed planning to do that. Qin Yu wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth and smiled gently. Let's see what you're capable of. The man in a blue robe's figure flashed as he charged at Qin Yu with earth-shaking laws of the heavens and earth. Boom! However, right at this moment, they encountered a huge black light in the distant horizon, which suddenly bombarded them. Martial progenitor? Someone from the 100-Beast Palace? The man in a blue robe's expression turned serious. He formed hand seals and changed his attack. He gathered the laws of the heavens and earth and attacked the black light. If he continued to attack Qin Yu, he would definitely suffer a destructive attack. Rumble. The laws of the heavens and earth clashed. The impact was so strong that the mountains below collapsed. What's going on? The rift here is sealed. They shouldn't be able to sense the presence of the beast aura, right? The man in a blue robe frowned when he saw the 3 martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace in the distance. He had purposely set up an ambush here as he had made ample preparations. Could it be the teleportation formation? The man in a blue robe suddenly recalled the teleportation beam that Qin Yu had fired into the sky. By the time he turned around to look, Qin Yu had already brought Ming Tongtian and the others and rapidly flew away. Who exactly is that kid? The man in a blue robe stared at Qin Yu with a cold flicker in his eyes. The insignificant Wu Sheng's realm that he had not paid any attention to had disrupted his plan. Could it be that the Snow Marquis's mansion was determined to kill him not only because of their personal grudge? The man in a blue robe cast a cold glance at Qin Yu, before he swiftly fled into the distance. Since the 100-Beast Palace had sent 3 martial progenitors, it was impossible for him to kill Qin Yu and his crew. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Meanwhile, the 3 martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace quickly teleported and appeared in front of Qin Yu. Among the 3 martial progenitors, 2 were first-layer martial progenitors and 1 was second-layer martial progenitor. The second-layer martial progenitor was none other than the single-horned young man from the 100-Beast Palace, Hai Tianjia. My soul is severely injured. The situation is extremely dangerous. Return to the palace at once. Hai Tianjia briefly sensed the condition of Ming Tongtian and the others, before he immediately returned without hesitation. Under the guidance of the martial progenitor, they returned to the 100-Beast Palace in half an hour. Chapter 213. 100-Beast Palace, Beast King Palace, Elders, is there anything else you'd like to ask? Qin Yu glanced at Hai Tianjia and the other 2 martial progenitors calmly. After returning to the 100-Beast Palace, Hai Tianjia and the other 2 martial progenitors had asked him about his disappearance from the God-burying ridge. After all, the 100-Beast Palace was interested in the fact that he had managed to escape from 9 peak martial gods. However, Qin Yu had already come up with an excuse. He had accidentally triggered the forbidding aura of the mystical ground and entered an ancient palace, where he had obtained many fortunate encounters, allowing his cultivation to reach the 6th-layer Wu Sheng realm. As for why his formation runes had also reached the sacred level, it was even simpler. It was not strange for his alchemy Tao to reach the sacred level and his formation runes to reach the sacred level. Elder Qin, don't overthink it. We don't mean anything by asking so many questions. Hai Tianzhe and the other two martial progenitors did not probe any further. Qin Yu had achieved the sacred level in both alchemy Tao and formation runes, thus the 100-beast palace would benefit greatly. Of course, their status would also be different from before. If that's the case, I have a request that I hope the three elders can agree to. Qin Yu said with a smile. Please go ahead. Hai Tianzhe said. I believe you've already investigated my background. I'm sure you're aware of the conflict between me and the Snow Marquis Palace. Therefore, I hope you can bring my people to the 100-beast palace. If the 100-beast palace, the Sky Crane Valley, and the Snow Marquis Palace did not have a battle, Qin Yu was not worried since there was a martial god guarding the 10,000-beast sea. However, even a martial progenitor was involved in the battle between the three great factions. The 10,000-beast sea only had a martial god, thus it was no longer safe. Of course, there was another important reason, which was the battle at Gui Yuan City. One of the 20 peak martial gods had managed to escape. Once the news about him being a sacred level formation master was exposed, the Snow Marquis Palace's attitude toward him would change. Just in case, it was better to bring his parents and the Qin clan to the 100-beast palace. Alright, I'll send someone over. Hai Tianzhe naturally agreed to it. If Qin Yu's clansmen came to the 100-beast palace, it would be very beneficial to their relationship with Qin Yu. Sorry to trouble you. Qin Yu nodded and inquired about the condition of Ming Tongtian and the others. Ming Tongtian and the other four had suffered severe injuries to their souls. Although they hadn't been annihilated, they were still unconscious. Qin Yu thought for a moment, then refined several extremely precious sacred pills for Ming Tongtian and the others. In addition to those saint elixirs, Qin Yu had also refined several 9 transformation blood spirit pills. Ming Tongtian and the other four all had the bloodline of the demon race. If their bloodline awakened, it might stimulate the recovery of their souls. Hai Tianzhe and the others were shocked when they saw the divine elixir that Qin Yu had refined. Qin Yu's current alchemy standards were already gradually approaching high-level alchemy saints. One must know that high-level pill sages were capable of refining sacred pills that were even useful to martial progenitors. As a result, their attitude toward Qin Yu became even friendlier. After finishing his alchemy, Qin Yu closed the door and declined the guests. From the battle at Luogui City to the ambush at Sky Crane Valley, the 2 times that Qin Yu encountered a martial ancestor, it was due to luck that he was able to escape. If he didn't have the supreme-grade ghost vein at Luogui City, this time, Hai Tianzhe and the others had not happened to fly past the area. If that was the case, Qin Yu would have to pay a great price if he wanted to escape successfully. Dragon Soul, how many times faster can you control the flow of time? With a thought, Qin Yu summoned the ancient seal of the mystical dragon before him. Following this, the ancient seal of the mystical dragon glowed and absorbed Qin Yu into the vast space of the ancient seal. 5 times at most. The dragon runes on the dragon soul glowed as a strong spacetime force spread out. Although he had comprehended the rules of spacetime, his cultivation was only in the Wu Sheng realm, thus he could not fully utilize the spacetime force. 5 times, that's enough. 5 times faster time flow was equivalent to cultivating in the ancient seal of the mystical dragon for 5 days, while only 1 day had passed outside. This was the true power of the rules of spacetime. The spacetime force was similar to the force of reincarnation, one of the most mysterious forces in the heavens and earth. At the peak of the dragon soul's strength, the flow of time could reach 100 times faster. Techniques such as reversing the flow of time could even affect the sky martial realm. It was said that if one fully comprehended the rules of spacetime, they could even go back in time and travel to the future. As for whether it was true or not, no one could prove it. In the history of the Qing region, there had been countless authorities. However, no one had heard of anyone who had fully comprehended the rules of spacetime. Ancient battle dragon art. Qin Yu sat with his legs crossed while absorbing the dragon qi to cultivate while comprehending the 5 intents. While Qin Yu was cultivating, A month had passed in the blink of an eye. Only 6 days had passed in the outside world. In the past few days, the 100-Beast Palace, the Sky Crane Valley, and the Snow Marquis residence had sent more than 10 Martial Progenitor Realm experts to battle. The battle had turned half of the Sky Martial Realm into an ancient battlefield, destroying everything in its path. However, after the battles between the 3 great factions gradually calmed down. Although the 3 sects were still holding a grudge against one another, it had not reached the point where one of them had to die. They knew that if the battle continued, it would only exhaust each other's strength. As a result, the middle-tier factions nearby would benefit from the battle. Therefore, after the battle, the 3 sects decided to withdraw their forces. However, although the battle had ended on the surface, the situation was still turbulent in the dark. In a secret chamber in the Snow Marquis residence, a martial god realm man sat with his legs crossed while performing a hand seal. 2 streams of soul force were clearly entangled with one another on his body. In the end, the 2 streams of soul force merged into one, leaving only a single stream of soul force. Damn it, the 100-Beast Palace and that little piece of shit. The martial god realm man's eyes sprang open as he uttered a furious roar with a ferocious expression. The man was none other than the bulky man in the armor who had managed to escape from Guiyuan City by possessing someone else's body. Although he managed to escape with his life, his cultivation could no longer return to the peak martial god realm. From the looks of it, your soul power is still a level higher. An indifferent voice appeared out of nowhere as several figures appeared in the secret chamber. Greetings, Elder. The bulky man in the armor immediately withdrew the resentment on his face and knelt down on one knee, bowing respectfully. He knew that possessing someone else's body was a great taboo and was never tolerated by the Marquis residents. You said that you discovered the reason why the 100-Beast Palace values that brat from the Qin clan. Tell us about it. The martial ancestors looked at the bulky man in the armor indifferently. That little piece of shit is a Saint Rank Array inscription master, one that can set up a triple array formation. The bulky man in the armor said coldly. A triple array formation inscription master? Are you sure? The martial progenitors were startled. Originally, with their status, they did not know about Qin Yu. However, during the pursuit at God-Burying Ridge, the 100-Beast Palace had actually dispatched a martial ancestor for Qin Yu, causing a war between the 3 sects. They could not help but be surprised by Qin Yu. Unfortunately, after some investigation, they discovered that Qin Yu's identity in the 100-Beast Palace was actually kept a secret. If it was as the bulky man in the armor said, that he was a Saint Rank Array inscription master, then it made sense. A 17-year-old Saint Rank Array inscription master. If it were their Snow Marquis residence, they would definitely focus on nurturing him. There's no mistake. We were all killed because we fell into his triple array formation. The bulky man in the armor gnashed his teeth. Bang! Suddenly, the laws of the world descended and the bulky man in the armor was restrained. Chapter 214. His telling the truth. A moment later, the martial progenitor released his grip on the bulky man and said, a 17-year-old sacred formation master. Could it be that there's a great formation master supporting him? A skinny martial progenitor mumbled to himself. It was reasonable for him to think so. Even in the 3 monarch realms, it was rare for a 17-year-old formation master to appear. They would find it hard to believe that there was no one supporting Qin Yu behind his back. It doesn't matter who is supporting him, we can't let him grow. A black-robed ancient sword martial progenitor said coldly with a murderous aura. They were not afraid of ordinary formation masters. However, Qin Yu was able to set up 3 sacred formations. If nothing went wrong, he would surely become an advanced formation sacred. The influence of an advanced formation sacred was on par with an advanced pill sacred. When the time came, many martial progenitor realm rogue cultivators or middle-tier factions would be recruited by the 100-Beast Palace. Such a pity, now that he has returned to the 100-Beast Palace, it'll be difficult to get rid of him. The martial progenitor felt regretful. If they had known about Qin Yu's whereabouts earlier, they would not have allowed Qin Yu to return to the 100-Beast Palace. Not necessarily, have you forgotten, the Heavenly Dragon Continent? The skinny martial progenitor wore a cold grin. According to the information they had, Qin Yu's parents and clansmen were in the Heavenly Dragon continent. It seems like we'll have to discuss this with the Sky Crane Valley. I believe they won't want to see an advanced formation sacred in the 100-Beast Palace. The martial progenitor's eyes flickered as he spoke. If they could use the Heavenly Dragon continent to lure Qin Yu out, the 100-Beast Palace would not just stand by and watch. It was a great plan to kill two birds with one stone for them and the Sky Crane Valley. Meanwhile, in a pitch-black ancient palace covered in curses, a figure knelt respectfully on the ground. The person was none other than one of the branch leaders of the Heavenly Demon sect who had pursued Qin Yu previously, the scholar. More than 10 figures stood on both sides of the palace. Their cultivations were the same as the scholar's, peak martial god realm. The person who snatched the Saint Seal has returned to the 100-Beast Palace. On the main seat of the ancient palace, there was a person who was covered in a black robe. Although that person had concealed his appearance, the aura he was emitting was undoubtedly that of a martial ancestor. Yes, that weak scholar was terrified. His Saint Seal had been stolen, which was a great crime punishable by death. Our sect master is still in seclusion. Even if we gather all the protectors, we still won't be able to fight against the 100-Beast Palace. The black-robed man muttered to himself. Protector Gui, the spies of the Snow Marquis Mansion have reported that the martial progenitor experts of the Snow Marquis Mansion and the Sky Crane Valley have been meeting frequently in the past 2 days. They seem to be planning something. The weak-looking scholar quickly added. Martial progenitors? Could it be that the two sects want to start another war? The black-robed man fell into deep thought. For a mid-tier faction, martial progenitor realm experts would not be dispatched unless it was something serious. Since the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis's mansion had sent out their martial progenitor experts, it was most likely that they were targeting the 100-Beast Palace. Send someone to keep an eye on the Snow Marquis Mansion and the Sky Crane Valley. Report back as soon as they make a move. The black-robed man ordered after a slight ponder. As the Snow Marquis Mansion, the Sky Crane Valley, and the Heavenly Demon sect were getting restless. In the 10,000 Ghost Realm that was a few dozen regions away, another faction was making a move in secret. The 10,000 Ghost Realm, as the name suggested, was where the main palace of the 10,000 Ghost Palace was located. You still haven't found any news about them? An eerie voice with a chilling murderous intent appeared in the splendid palace filled with a ghastly aura. The person speaking was none other than Mo Le Huang. For now, we haven't found anything. A peak martial god realm elder broke out in cold sweat. A bunch of trash, it's been a few months, why can't we find any trace of them? Mo Le Huang's face was dark and filled with murderous intent. Ever since he had returned to the 10,000 Ghost Palace after the battle at Luogui City, he had mobilized all the factions of the 10,000 Ghost Palace to investigate in secret. However, after a few months, apart from finding the teleportation formation in the valley, it was as if Qin Yu and the people of the Long family had disappeared from the 100 Martial Realm. There was no trace of them at all. Could it be that Qin Yu and the Long family had left the 100 Martial Realm? Thinking of this, Mo Le Huang's face turned even colder. Once Qin Yu and the others escaped from the 100 Martial Realm, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to find them. Not to mention the other 6 Martial Realms, the 100 Martial Realm alone had thousands of shattered continents. If they really wanted to hide, they could hide in any shattered continent and it would be impossible to find them. You still haven't found any clues about the person who exposed so many secret techniques? Mo Le Huang said coldly again. Even if he's hiding, he should have left some traces behind, right? Elder Mo, we've investigated almost everyone who fits the description, but we really haven't found anything. The peak martial god realm elder's face changed as soon as he spoke. He felt that Mo Le Huang's murderous intent was several times stronger than before. Elder Mo, could that person not be from the 100 Martial Realm? A red-haired man kneeling on the ground said. Mo Le Huang frowned. Since they couldn't find any traces, it was very likely. Continue to investigate. I don't care where he's from, you must find that person. Mo Le Huang ordered coldly and got up to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, he seemed to have thought of something and said, that's right, that person is a sacred array master. Focus on that. Mo Lihuang left with a gloomy expression after saying this. Seeing Mo Lihuang leave, the martial god realm elders in the palace let out a sigh of relief. Not from the 100 martial realm? A sacred array master? I remember. After the other elders left, a strange look flashed across the eyes of the peak martial god realm, who was covered in cold sweat. Men. The peak martial god realm stood up and walked out of the palace. Elder Lu. 2 low-level martial gods walked over. Go and find the information about the battle between the Sky Crane Valley, the Snow Marquis residence, and the 100 Beast Palace. The peak martial god realm said quickly. Soon, the 2 low-level martial gods delivered a piece of information to him. With the 10,000 Ghost Palace's resources, it was easy for them to investigate the situation of the 3 mid-tier factions. As expected, a sacred array master suddenly appeared in the 100 Beast Palace, but, the peak martial god murmured and frowned, 17 years old? To be able to become a saint rank array master at the age of 17, this was indeed an extraordinary talent. However, could a 17-year-old sacred array master escape from a martial progenitor? Send someone to keep an eye on the 100 Beast Palace and investigate that person's background. After a long while, the peak martial god finally spoke. Although the possibility was not high, they could not let go of the clue that they had obtained. Affirmative. The 2 low-level martial gods immediately left. 3 days later, at the 100 Beast Palace, Elder Hai Tianjia, who was meditating in seclusion, was disturbed by the arrival of a martial god. What's the matter? Hai Tianjia opened his eyes and asked when he saw the martial god with an anxious expression. Something happened to the 10 peak martial god realm elders who went to the heavenly dragon continent to pick up Elder Qin's clansmen. The martial god blurted out. What did you say? Hai Tianjia was shocked. He immediately rose to his feet. What happened? Just a moment ago, 3 of the natal beast badges of the 10 peak martial god realm elders cracked. The martial god blurted out. Damn it. Hai Tianjia's expression changed. He immediately left the palace. Chapter 215. Elder Hai. Outside the palace, a few martial progenitors had arrived after receiving the news. Their expressions were unpleasant. Since Qin Yu had returned to the 100 Beast Palace, he had refined more than 10 9-spirited blood pills and other precious sacred pills. Apart from Ming Tongtian and the others who were in a coma due to severe injuries to their souls. The 100 Beast Palace had 4 peak martial gods whose bloodlines had undergone atavistic awakening. It would not take long for them to break through the barrier and rank up to the martial progenitor realm. 1 more martial progenitor was enough to boost the strength of the 100 Beast Palace, not to mention 4 more martial progenitors. As a result, Qin Yu's status in the 100 Beast Palace was on par with the advanced pill sacred. Therefore, they had immediately sent someone to the heavenly dragon continent after the battle between the 3 sects had ended. However, they did not expect such an accident to take place. Does Elder Qin know about this? Hai Tianjia's eyes turned cold with a faint murderous intent. Something had happened to the 10 peak martial god realm elders of the 100 Beast Palace. Apart from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Mansion, he could not think of any other possibilities. Elder Qin has not come out since he went into seclusion. Should we inform him? A peak martial god asked. Not for now. Judging from the time, the 10 elders should have just crossed the ancient battlefield. How about this, we'll head to the heavenly dragon continent first. Just in case, we'll inform the vice palace leader to come out of seclusion. Hai Tianjia said after a slight ponder. If the Sky Crane Valley and the other sects were involved, it would not make any difference even if they informed Qin Yu. Got it. The elder with the peak martial god realm left immediately. Let's go. Without hesitation, Hai Tianjia and the rest of the martial progenitors immediately teleported away. Meanwhile, Qin Yu was still cultivating in seclusion in the ancient dragon seal. Although only 10 days had passed in the outside world, Qin Yu had been cultivating in the ancient dragon seal for 50 days. In the past 50 days, Qin Yu did not need to treat his injuries or travel. He could fully focus on cultivating. As such, both his intent of the heavens and earth and his cultivation had improved rapidly. Currently, His 5/10 of the heavens and earth had reached the 8th layer realm, Wu Sheng's peak. Roar. A clear dragon roar suddenly resounded from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's hands that were forming hand seals suddenly started to change. An extremely frightening fluctuation stealthily spread from Qin Yu's hand seal. This fluctuation, the dragon soul whose body was covered in shining dragon scales suddenly looked at Qin Yu. Is it that forbidden technique? With just a glance, the dragon soul could tell what Qin Yu was cultivating. Hoo. As Qin Yu's hands continued to form seals, the terrifying fluctuations between his hand seals swept out like a hurricane. 18 hours later. Condense. With a low shout, Qin Yu's hand stopped. Between his hands, there was an inch-large, sparkling and translucent ancient seal. Rumble. At this moment, Qin Yu entered the azure dragon battling the heavens state. Vast amounts of true yuan and dragon qi poured into the inch-long ancient seal. The heaven-vanquishing formation and the god-vanquishing formation trembled at this moment as their killing intent was continuously absorbed by the inch-long ancient seal. The energy waves emanating from the inch-sized ancient seal were clearly growing stronger. Bang! When all the true yuan in Qin Yu's body was absorbed, the ancient seal suddenly exploded. That inch-sized ancient seal suddenly exploded and turned into countless specks of light that fused with the acupoints all over Qin Yu's body. Success! Seeing Qin Yu open his eyes, the dragon soul immediately flew over. That's right. A smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Now that his cultivation had reached the peak of the Wu Sheng realm, his 5/10 of the heavens and earth had reached the 8th layer realm. He had finally recovered the various means of his previous life. After withdrawing his mind, Qin Yu entered the state of cultivation again. Now, both his intents of the heavens and earth and his cultivation were only a step away from the martial god realm. Qin Yu planned to use this opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. This is the blood mist devil stream. Suddenly, Qin Yu, who was cultivating with his eyes closed, rose to his feet and unleashed a shocking killing intent. What's wrong? Sensing Qin Yu's killing intent, the dragon soul asked. The 10,000 beasts banner has triggered the barrier of the blood mist devil stream. Qin Yu's eyes were cold as he immediately left the ancient seal space and stored the ancient seal in his body before leaving the palace. The 10,000 beasts banner has gone to the blood mist devil stream? Is the Qin clan in trouble? Before coming to the 100 martial realm, Qin Yu had left the 10,000 beasts banner in the Qin clan to prevent any danger from happening to Qin Yu. Once the Qin clan was in danger, the sky-reaching ape king would use the 10,000 beasts banner to teleport the Qin clan to the blood mist devil stream. In the blood mist devil stream, Qin Yu had used the power of fairy Shualan's sovereign seal to form the sovereign barrier. It was not completely safe, but even a martial progenitor would not be able to break it in a short time. Elder Qin, you know about the heavenly dragon continent. When they saw Qin Yu coming out, they immediately rushed toward the teleportation hall. The peak martial gods guarding Qin Yu's palace were stunned for a while, before they quickly followed them. When did you get the news? Qin Yu asked coldly. Around half a day ago, 3 of the 10 peak martial gods who went to the heavenly dragon continent died. However, Elder Hai has already gone with 10 martial progenitor realm elders. Elder Qin, you don't have to worry too much. The peak martial gods tried to persuade Qin Yu. Qin Yu ignored the words of the martial gods and rushed to the teleportation hall of the 100 Beast Palace. Although it could not teleport him directly to the heavenly dragon continent, the teleportation formation could at least cross a few regions. Meanwhile, a group of people with powerful auras arrived at the teleportation hall. Vice Palace Master. The peak martial gods immediately bowed respectfully when they saw the man leading the group. The man was wearing a golden robe. His eyes were dark golden too, as if they were made of gold. The man with golden eyes was the Vice Palace Master of the 100 Beast Palace, Jin Lingxiao. Jin Lingxiao's true form was the immortal Sun Golden Crow. His strength was only weaker than the mysterious Palace Master of the 100 Beast Palace. So you're Qin Yu, Elder Qin? Jin Lingxiao observed Qin Yu. It was his first time seeing Qin Yu in person. Vice Palace Master. Qin Yu observed Jin Lingxiao and his crew too. Behind Jin Lingxiao were 17 martial progenitor realm emperors of the beast tribe. The nine-tailed fox emperor who had ranked up to the martial progenitor realm because of Qin Yu's 9-rotation blood spirit pill was among them too. However, apart from Jin Lingxiao who had a cultivation of the 4th-layer martial progenitor realm, the rest of the emperors of the beast tribe were mostly 1st-layer and 2nd-layer martial progenitors. The martial progenitor realm was significantly stronger than the martial god realm. However, the difficulty of cultivating the martial progenitor realm was over 10,000 times harder than the martial god realm. Many martial progenitors were unable to break through the 1st layer in their entire lives. Elder Qin, I know you're worried about the safety of your people, but there's a martial progenitor behind this. It's most likely related to the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residence. It's highly possible that they're aware of your identity as the Alchemy and Formation Saints. Therefore, it's better for you to stay in the palace. Since Qin Yu was here, Jin Lingxiao could easily tell what Qin Yu was up to. No, I want to settle this matter personally. Qin Yu wore a cold look, but he could not conceal the murderous intent in his heart. Dragons had reverse scales, those who touched them would die instantly. In this life, his parents were undoubtedly one of Qin Yu's reverse scales. So what if they were martial progenitors? Even a martial progenitor would die this time. Chapter 216. Jin Lingxiao's eyelids jumped. Even though Qin Yu's cultivation was only at the Wu Sheng realm. However, his heart skipped a beat when he sensed the terrifying aura he was emitting. Could it be that he felt a faint sense of danger? This guy. Jin Lingxiao stared at Qin Yu. A mere Wu Sheng realm cultivator was able to make him, a 4th-layer martial progenitor, feel a sense of danger. Jin Lingxiao found it hard to believe even after experiencing it himself. Vice Leader, aren't you going to stop Elder Qin? Seeing Qin Yu heading toward the portal, the 17 martial progenitor realm beast emperors glanced at Jin Lingxiao. Qin Yu's ability had already been displayed extremely clearly. As long as Qin Yu was here, the 100 Beast Palace would become a top faction in less than 100 years. According to their analysis, it was highly possible that the incident was a conspiracy against Qin Yu. Why was Jin Lingxiao not stopping Qin Yu from leaving the palace? Let's go. Jin Lingxiao collected his thoughts and immediately led the 17 martial progenitor realm beast emperors toward the portal. However, he did not stop Qin Yu. He was the only one who had sensed the aura that Qin Yu had unleashed. He was eager to see what secrets Qin Yu was hiding. Whoosh! With a flicker, Qin Yu, Jin Lingxiao, and the rest of the 19 disappeared from the portal. A figure appeared in the rift a few hundred li away from the 100 Beast Palace. Did they leave the place? The person was hiding in the rift, holding an ancient cursed compass in his hand. He immediately flew away after seeing the light dot disappear from the cursed compass. The person was none other than the spy that the heavenly demon cult had placed outside the 100 Beast Palace after seeing the movements of the Sky Crane Valley and the other sects. Whoosh! However, an icy sword glow was slashed forward all of a sudden. The spy was slain as soon as he appeared. Even the custodians are here. A white-robed figure appeared, holding the ancient frost sword in his hand as he stepped forward. Grabbing the incantation compass in his hand, Jen Scar's face turned cold. The heavenly demon cult had caught a few big fishes this time. Rumble. At this time, somewhere in the ominous ancient battlefield, an earth-shattering and violent battle resounded throughout the battlefield. Dozens of extremely terrifying laws of heaven and earth collided wantonly in the void, causing the heavens to tremble and the earth to crack. The participants of the battle were all martial progenitors. The forces involved in the battle were Sky Crane Valley, Snow Marquis Residence and 100 Beast Palace. They actually sent out 10 martial progenitors. Even if they are saint-ranked formation masters, isn't the 100 Beast Palace thinking too highly of that kid? In the Sky Crane Valley, a white-haired old man with a long spear in his hand looked at the 10 people from the 100 Beast Palace who were surrounded. The shock in his eyes could not be concealed. This time, if they had not paid enough attention to this matter and sent out 10 martial ancestors each, they would not have been able to deal with it. In that case, this plan of killing 2 birds with 1 stone might end up shooting itself in the foot. Who would have thought that the 100 Beasts Palace would send 10 martial progenitors for the sake of a sacred formation master? Elder Yi, Elder Feng, you guys are the fastest. We'll hold them off here. You guys go to the Heavenly Dragon continent immediately and see what's going on there. Hai Tianzhe, who was surrounded by the laws of the heavens and earth, wore an unpleasant expression when he saw the 20 martial progenitors trapping them. He had guessed that the Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents were behind this. However, he had not expected 20 martial progenitors to ambush him here. It seemed like the Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents had indeed discovered Qin Yu's identity as the Pill and Formation Saints. As such, Hai Tianzhe was extremely concerned about Qin Yu's parents and clan on the Heavenly Dragon continent. It would be troublesome if Qin Yu's family ended up in the hands of the Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents. Got it. The two martial progenitors were aware of the importance of the situation. One of them transformed into a snow-white heavenly winged bird, while the other was surrounded by a strong gust of wind. Whoosh! Whoosh! With a deafening piercing sound, the two martial progenitors swiftly left the battlefield at lightning speed. Trying to leave? Stay. However, at that instant, a loud roar could be heard. 100 jong-wide fiery fist and a thunderous python landed forcefully on the two martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. A ferocious force of the rules of order was unleashed. The two martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace were sent flying by the impact. Second layer martial progenitor realm? Hai Tianzhe turned around and wore a stern expression when he saw the two martial progenitors. Among them, he was the only second-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator. However, the Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents had two second-layer martial progenitors. They had been suppressed for a long time, but now, two more martial progenitors had appeared. It was extremely disadvantageous for them. Set up the formation. The eyes of the cultivator surrounded by the thunderous python flickered as he glared at Hai Tianzhe and his crew. Since they had successfully lured out the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace, they would not let them go. It was a rare opportunity to eliminate the strength of the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. Any middle-ranked faction in the 100 martial realm would suffer a great loss if they lost a martial progenitor realm cultivator. Bang! A human figure appeared from the fiery fist. He spread his hands, which were emitting a yellow glow while his right hand was engulfed in raging flames. He joined his hands together, summoning a yellow fiery seal that flew into the ground of the ancient battlefield. Bang, bang, bang! In the next moment, the ground suddenly exploded, and huge pillars of light shot up into the sky, straight into the clouds. When all 990 pillars of light appeared in the sky, they immediately condensed into a giant earth-red formation. A visible yellow aura burst out from the light pillars, suppressing the heavens and earth. Below the yellow aura, countless wisps of raging flames could be seen, burning the heavens and earth. At that instant, the figures of Hai Tianzhe and his crew sank rapidly as if the rift had turned into the ground. The temperature of the rift was as shocking as that of a volcano, which even the martial progenitors could not resist. Crap! Is this a peak sacred formation, the 9-layered earth-scorching formation? Hai Tianzhe was startled. Let's get out of here. They were already struggling to escape from the suppression. If they were trapped in the formation, they would be in great trouble. Perhaps, they would all be buried here. Attack! The 20 martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents made their moves, causing the rules of the heavens and earth to erupt like waves. At that instant, the 9-layered earth-scorching formation unleashed its yellow gravity and raging flames. Hai Tianzhe and his crew who were trying to escape from the formation immediately fell into a desperate situation. Mingji, you're about to die. Why are you still struggling? Seeing the 10 martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace revealing their beast forms, the giant serpent let out a sinister laugh. Since they were trapped in the 9-layered earth-scorching formation, it was only a matter of time before the 10 people of the 100 Beast Palace died. Meanwhile, the other martial progenitors relied on the power of the formation to attack the 10 people of the 100 Beast Palace. Crack! However, after more than 6 hours, when the situation of the 10 people of the 100 Beast Palace was getting worse, a series of inaudible shattering noises could be heard one after another. This is... The giant serpent's ears twitched. His eyes widened as he lowered his head. At an unknown location, the bottom of the 900-plus enormous light pillars that soared into the sky was covered with cracks. "Who's there?" The giant serpent immediately dove downward with a dark expression. Bang! However, almost at the same time, the 900 light pillars exploded simultaneously, causing the 9-layered earth-scorching formation to collapse and disappear. A human figure appeared in the middle of the earthy yellow flames and dust. It was none other than Qin Yu. Chapter 217. It's him. Seeing Qin Yu, the man with the lightning serpent was startled, before his eyes flickered with a murderous intent. He had no idea how Qin Yu had managed to sneak into the 9-layered earth-scorching formation without being detected by him. However, the fact that Qin Yu was able to break the 9-layered earth-scorching formation with ease was a testament to his capabilities. His capabilities were close to that of an advanced sacred formation. Qin Yu had to be eliminated. Die. The man with the lightning serpent flickered his finger with a murderous intent. The lightning serpent around him immediately turned into a ray of lightning and sprang forward with the power of thunder. Bang! The rift trembled vigorously as the laws of the heavens and earth swept across the place. However, the lightning serpent uttered a roar all of a sudden before it was turned into ashes by the golden flames. Is that the solar golden flame? The solar golden crow tribe? The pupils of the person surrounded by lightning shrank and his body, which was originally charging out, immediately stopped in the air. There was only one martial progenitor realm expert from the solar golden crow tribe in the 100-beast palace. As the laws of the heavens and earth dissipated, a figure appeared before Qin Yu. It was Jin Lingxiao, who reached out his hand with a golden beast rune on his palm, engulfed in the solar golden flame. It's Jin Lingxiao indeed. The man surrounded by lightning straightened his face. Even though his cultivation was at the peak second-layer martial progenitor realm. But compared to Jin Lingxiao, the difference was not just a little bit. Vice Palace Master. The injured Hai Tianzhe and his crew became excited when they saw Jin Lingxiao and his crew. Kill, leave no one alive. Jin Lingxiao's eyes turned icy. If they had not made it in time and Qin Yu had not broken the formation, Hai Tianzhe's group of 10 was likely going to face a great catastrophe. Jin Lingxiao's figure was engulfed in golden beast runes as his figure was engulfed in golden flames. With a flicker, he charged at the man surrounded by lightning. Kill. The other martial progenitor realm beast emperors immediately charged forward. Rumble. An earth-shattering battle of laws broke out once again, affecting more than half of the ominous ancient battlefield. The heavens trembled and the earth cracked. It was as if doomsday had arrived. While the three great factions were fighting, Qin Yu, who had broken the formation earlier, had quietly disappeared. Beneath the ancient battlefield, Qin Yu, who was in the Azure Dragon battling the Heavens state, used the Earth Escape technique with all his might and traveled through the Earth at an extremely fast speed. Since Hai Tianzhe's group of 10 had been trapped here the entire time, Chu Feng's group of 10 had been trapped here the entire time. In other words, the Heavenly Dragon continent had yet to send any martial progenitor realm reinforcements. He didn't have time to waste here. In less than half a day, Qin Yu had left the ominous ancient battlefield and returned to the Heavenly Dragon mainland. Without the slightest hesitation, Qin Yu directly flew towards Qingju. Blood Mist Devil Stream. At this moment, in the Blood Mist Devil Stream, at the bottom of the Dragon Blood Ancient Pool, there were two terrifying figures. Both of them were martial progenitors. Looking at their attire, it was obvious that they belonged to the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residence respectively. In front of the two martial progenitors was a powerful barrier, blocking their path. Inside the barrier, in front of the 10,000 beast banner with a crack, the spirit of the sky-reaching ape emperor and the four-peak martial gods of the 100-beast palace stared at the two martial progenitors with stern expressions. Behind them were Qin Yu's parents and the people of the Qin clan with pale faces. What kind of barrier is this? Even the force of laws is so difficult to break. The martial progenitor of the Sky Crane Valley with a giant axe in his hand was astounded. They had only managed to leave a crack on the barrier after attacking it for an entire day. Not many people would believe it if they were told the truth. Such a powerful barrier, Could it be that this Sumeru realm was established by a martial monarch realm expert? The martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace was astounded too. Could it be that a martial monarch realm expert had been here before? The reinforcements of the 100 Beast Palace might be on their way. We have to break the barrier as soon as possible. The martial progenitor withdrew his astonishment and wore a stern look. We can't afford to waste any more time. The aura of the martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace grew even more astounded. Beast spirit, possess. Following a groan, a crimson glow burst out from the martial progenitor's body. A giant crimson wolf covered his body. The giant crimson wolf possessed a cultivation of the martial progenitor realm too. However, its aura was slightly impure, thus it was not as pure as a real martial progenitor. It was obvious that the giant crimson wolf did not possess a cultivation of the martial progenitor realm when it was alive. It must have improved its cultivation with some kind of secret technique. Realm breaking / With the giant crimson wolf possessing his body, the aura of the martial progenitor improved tremendously, which was comparable to the second-layer martial progenitor realm. He held the battle axe tightly with both hands and slashed forward with all his might. A crimson axe glow tore the rift apart and struck the crack on the barrier. Dong! A clear echo could be heard from the barrier like a copper drum. Following the ripples, the terrifying force of the crimson axe was shattered once again. Whoosh! However, following this, the martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace executed a sharp slash. It also slashed at the crack, causing the rules of the heavens and earth to explode. Even though the destructive force of the slash was dissipated by the barrier. However, the 4 peak martial gods from the 100 Beast Palace were extremely nervous. They were even terrified. They could clearly see that the crack had expanded by about an inch. Even though it was only an inch wide, the 4 martial gods of the 100 Beast Palace were filled with despair. Humph, do you really think we can't do anything to you with this barrier around? The martial progenitor of the Sky Crane Valley let out a hideous grin. The giant crimson wolf uttered a roar into the sky as his aura grew stronger. Bang bang bang! The battle axe in his hand turned into crimson rays that slashed at the crack on the barrier. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The black-shirted man of the Snow Marquis Palace also swung his sword at the crack like a meteor shower. Under their storm-like attacks, the barrier continued to tremble. The barrier trembled incessantly, and the crack gradually grew from several inches to the size of a thumb. If it weren't for the fact that the barrier was strong enough, it would have collapsed long ago. If it were a complete emperor seal, not to mention 2 martial progenitors. Even 2 martial monarchs would not be able to break through it. However, most of the power of the emperor seal left behind by Fairy Shualan was used to seal the heavenly dragon's soul. The power of the barrier was not even a 10,000th of the power left behind by Fairy Shualan. You two seem to be having a good time. How about I play with you too? Just as the crack was getting bigger and bigger, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. An icy voice with a terrifying murderous intent could be heard all of a sudden. Xiao Yu. Hearing the voice, Qin Tianfeng and Shen Wanhui's eyes flickered with excitement. Bang bang! The martial progenitor with the axe and the black-shirted martial progenitor were startled. They immediately turned around and attacked. The destructive rules of the heavens and earth exploded, causing the dragon blood pond to collapse, resulting in a huge pit. A figure with a blue dragon circled around his figure was revealed from the dust. It's you. When that battle-axe martial ancestor from the Sky Crane Valley saw that the person who had appeared was Qin Yu, the smile on his face grew even more sinister. Haha, great timing. The black-shirted martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace burst out laughing. They had been trying to capture the people of the Qin clan to deal with Qin Yu. Since Qin Yu had presented himself to them, there was no need for them to waste their time. Chapter 218. Perfect timing indeed. As Qin Yu's gaze swept across the cracks on the barrier, a hint of joy appeared on his face. If he were to be held back at the ancient battlefield, the consequences would be unimaginable. As a result, Qin Yu's murderous intent skyrocketed. Not only would the 2 martial progenitors die, he would eliminate the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace too. You're overestimating yourself. Sensing Qin Yu's murderous intent, The blood axe martial progenitor of the Sky Crane Valley became enraged. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Qin Yu as if he had teleported. Whoosh! The giant axe containing a terrifying murderous intent slashed at Qin Yu like a ferocious wolf. 9 Serenities Purgatory. Qin Yu's figure was covered in dragon scales as a pitch-black glow was emitted. At that instant, the area within 1,000 li was shrouded, hindering one's vision and senses. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, his strength had reached the peak martial god realm after executing the heaven-battling Azure Dragon. The power of the 9 Serenities Purgatory was enhanced too. Break. The blood axe martial progenitor raised his eyebrows as he slashed horizontally with his axe. Following a slash, the rift shuddered as the 9 Serenities Purgatory was torn apart. However, Qin Yu's figure had already disappeared. The martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace immediately turned around as he became aware of Qin Yu's presence. As he expected, he discovered Qin Yu had appeared at the barrier. Furthermore, in an instant, the spirit formation restriction was broken. The cultivators of the Qin clan and the 100-Beast Palace immediately vanished after being scanned by a 3-colored glow. Such a shocking secret technique and mystical ability. This kid. That black-clothed martial ancestor narrowed his eyes as he looked to Qin Yu. His eyes were flickering with fiery greed. Even though he had no idea what Qin Yu's heaven-battling Azure Dragon and 9 Serenities Purgatory were. However, it was able to improve a Wu Sheng's strength to the peak martial god realm. On top of that, he was able to save the people under their noses. One didn't even need to think to know how terrifying these 2 secret arts were. If he could get his hands on it, he would probably be able to fight enemies 2 or 3 levels above him. God-shattering slash. However, at this moment, the battle axe martial progenitor from the Sky Crane Valley charged out with a terrifying aura. He once again swung his axe at Qin Yu, causing the void to explode. Whoosh! Qin Yu's figure flickered as dragon patterns gathered on the 9 nether dragon spear. The spear thrust violently, as if Shenron had gone out to sea, its might vast and mighty swept out. At the same time, the 9 Hells Purgatory covered the incoming blood axe martial progenitor. I won't fall for the same trick twice. The eyes of the blood axe martial progenitor were filled with murderous intent. The terrifying laws of heaven and earth erupted, filling the entire purgatory space. Even if his vision was taken away and his senses were sealed, he could also clearly see Qin Yu's movements through the power of the laws. Fuse. With a loud roar, the battle axe landed on the martial progenitor. The giant blood-red wolf turned into a beam of crimson light and merged with the blood-red battle axe. Countless crimson runes were emitted from the battle axe, causing it to turn blood-red. A murderous intent that felt like it could slaughter the 9 heavens and 10 earths was fired into the sky, shaking the 9 heavens. Die! The battle axe martial progenitor lashed out with his axe. A several tens of meters large crimson-colored axe ray, carrying with it the power to shatter all living things, pounced toward Qin Yu. The battle axe martial progenitor wore a ferocious expression. This move could be said to be his strongest combat power. He did not believe that Qin Yu would be able to survive this attack. Demon Eyes of Destruction, Ancient Spacetime Deadly Formation, Heaven-Devouring Dragon Seal. Seeing that the laws of heaven and earth had locked onto him, Qin Yu decided to stop dodging. A pitch-black demon eye appeared in his eyes. The ancient spacetime deadly formation descended, covering 100 jong around him. At the tip of the 9 nether dragon spear, a ferocious dragon head over 10 jong long burst out. Whoosh whoosh. In the blink of an eye, the heaven-devouring dragon seal and the blood-red rune collided with one another, causing the rift to tremble violently. How is this possible? The battle axe martial progenitor wore a ferocious expression as his eyes were filled with disbelief. His strongest secret technique had been blocked by the dragon head mark? Something's not right. However, the eyes of the black-shirted man in the Snow Marquis residence flickered. The power of the dragon head seal was indeed shocking. However, the thing that had prevented the blood-red axe glow from unleashing its true strength. It was the pitch-black eye glow and the killing formation. The black-shirted man was unable to identify the pitch-black eye glow. However, The killing formation was able to influence the space around it. Otherwise, the ancient dragon head seal alone would not be able to block the blood-red axe glow. Even now, Qin Yu had also executed the heaven-battling azure dragon, 9 nether purgatory, heaven-devouring dragon seal, ancient spacetime deadly formation, and demon eyes of destruction. However, the power of the attacks was significantly stronger than when they were at the Luogui city. After all, apart from the ancient spacetime deadly formation, the 3 secret arts and divine abilities of the dragon tribe and the ghost eye of destruction had become stronger as his cultivation improved. If Qin Yu's cultivation had already reached the martial god realm, based on his previous moves, the first-layer martial progenitor would be severely injured even if he managed to survive the attack. Tunneling art. With the extreme speed intent, Qin Yu burrowed into the ground. Following this, he appeared on the left side of the blood axe martial progenitor. Thunderous spear explosion. The 9 nether dragon spear pierced forward furiously, directing the power of the ancient spacetime deadly formation. It gathered at one point and fired at the blood axe martial progenitor. Bang! The blood axe martial progenitor managed to block the attack in time. However, due to the influence of the spacetime force, he was still knocked over 10 jong away. "I'll kill you." The blood axe martial progenitor felt extremely humiliated after being knocked back by a mere Wu Sheng. His expression was utterly terrifying as his body was engulfed in a ferocious murderous intent. Like a ferocious beast that had just been released from its cage, he sprang toward Qin Yu with a tremendous murderous intent. Forbidden art, art of sacrifice. Qin Yu glanced at the Snow Marquis residence and the black-robed martial progenitor who was still spectating the battle. Qin Yu pointed his spear at the battle-axe martial god that was charging at him with a vast might. At that instant, the meridians on Qin Yu's body emitted a blinding glow. Countless white glows appeared and gathered at the tip of the 9 nether dragon spear. Puff! The eyes of the blood axe martial progenitor flickered with a white flicker as his figure stiffened. The terrifying rules of the heavens and earth surrounding him collapsed all of a sudden. A bloody hole the size of a thumb could be seen on his forehead, penetrating his head. The martial progenitor had fallen. Forbidden art, art of sacrifice. The secret art that Qin Yu's master had taught him in his past life was comparable to the 9 esotericas of the battle dragon. The reason being that the art of sacrifice was to merge all of one's strength into a single point. What the hell? The eyes of the black-robed martial progenitor who had initially planned to reap the benefits widened in astonishment. Wu Sheng had slain a martial progenitor with a higher cultivation than himself. This had never happened in the history of the 100 martial realm. Qin Yu, who was only 17 years old, had done it. If this were made known to the public, not only the 17 martial realms, even the 3 monarch realms would be astonished. Chapter 219. Whoosh whoosh. With a shudder, the white ray of light turned into countless light dots and returned to Qin Yu's acupuncture points. However, it could be seen that the light dots were a few times dimmer than before. "You must be tired after watching for so long. Why don't I give you a ride?" Qin Yu's gaze landed on the martial progenitor's figure. Whoosh! The martial progenitor's figure shuddered as his hair stood on end, before he immediately fled for his life. After witnessing Qin Yu's strength, he was not confident that he could defeat Qin Yu. What he needed to do now was to escape and inform the Snow Marquis's mansion. All of them had completely underestimated Qin Yu from the very beginning. He was able to kill a martial progenitor at the age of 17. If Qin Yu were allowed to grow for a few more years, even a martial monarch realm expert would not be able to defeat Qin Yu. It's too late to run now. A cold grin appeared on Qin Yu's face. Since the black-shirted man had seen his trump card, there was no way Qin Yu would let him go. Buzz buzz buzz. The runes on Qin Yu's palm began to spread. With the dragon blood ancient pond as the center, the void within a radius of 1,000 feet was covered by a series of profound and mysterious formation runes. Bang! A loud crash could be heard as the black-shirted man from the Snow Marquis's mansion slammed into the rift. It was as if there was an invisible wall in the void, blocking his path. Break! The sword in the black-shirted man's hand emitted a glow as he slashed at the rift. The runes in the rift vibrated vigorously, but they did not collapse. Whoosh! A sharp air-piercing noise rises. Qin Yu is as fast as a ghost. He raises his spear and ferociously attacks. Damn it, do you really think I'm afraid of you? The black-shirted man was startled, but as a martial progenitor, he did not lose his composure. After uttering a roar, he swung his sword and gathered the power of the rules of the heavens and earth. After that, the sky seemed to have transformed into an ocean, and layer upon layer of sword tides appeared and seemed as if they intended to obliterate the heavens and the earth. Obviously, he had witnessed the scene of Qin Yu killing the battle-axe martial progenitor. The black-robed man went all out the moment he attacked. Azure dragon battles the heavens. 9 hells purgatory. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. Ghost eyes of destruction. Heavenly stellar divine light. Ancient spacetime slaughter array. Qin Yu did not dodge the attacks. He continued to execute his martial arts and secret arts, causing a destructive force to sweep across the place. Rumble. The collision between the laws of the world and the mystic abilities and secret techniques caused the entire blood mist devil stream to tremble. Immortal sacrifice art. In the end, Qin Yu used the immortal sacrifice art to kill the black-robed man. With Qin Yu's current strength, the immortal sacrifice art was his greatest trump card, second only to the god-punishing array. Moreover, unlike the god eradication formation, Qin Yu wouldn't suffer the backlash of the god eradication formation when he executed the immortal sacrifice art. That being said, there was a price to pay for using a forbidden art. The reason why the immortal sacrifice art would turn into light dots and merge with Qin Yu's meridians after it was executed was because of the immortal sacrifice art. The immortal sacrifice art would constantly absorb Qin Yu's blood essence to nurture it. The more frequently Qin Yu executed the immortal sacrifice art, the more blood essence the immortal sacrifice art would absorb. If one did not have enough self-control and did not control the number of times they executed the immortal sacrifice art, their flesh would be sucked dry by the immortal sacrifice art. After slaying the 2 martial progenitors, Qin Yu stored their corpses. Previously at Luogui City, the skeleton Phantom Emperor's corpse had been shattered into pieces. Now that he had the 2 martial progenitors' corpses, he could use them to refine the skeleton Phantom Emperor's body. Although Qin Yu was not an expert in the path of ghosts, he was quite familiar with the art of puppetry. After leaving the Blood Mist Devil Stream, Qin Yu went to the 10,000 Beast Ocean. Previously, the 2 martial progenitors had killed countless beasts at the 10,000 Beast Ocean. Those that were still alive had hidden deep inside the 10,000 Beast Ocean, not daring to show themselves. After Qin Yu flew around once, he left the 10,000 Demon Sea and entered the ominous ancient battlefield. The people of the 100 Beast Palace had yet to arrive, most likely because the battle had yet to come to an end. Rumble. As he thought, at the center of the ancient battlefield, the 9 heavens and 10 earths were exploding violently. Even from a few thousand li away, he could clearly sense it. More reinforcements from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residence. He sensed the presence of more than 10 martial progenitor realm auras among the 3 great factions. Qin Yu, who was initially flying in the sky, immediately dove into the ground. As he approached the battlefield, the situation was exactly as Qin Yu had predicted. The Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residence that initially only had around 20 people. Currently, the number of martial progenitors had increased to over 30. It was obvious that they were the reinforcements that had arrived later. As a result, the 100 Beast Palace, which initially had the upper hand, was now evenly matched. Bang bang bang. The reason why the 100 Beast Palace was evenly matched and not suppressed was because of Jin Lingxiao. Jin Lingxiao, who was engulfed in golden flames and had a faint 3-legged golden crow behind him, was fighting against 10 people at once. There were 9 layers of the martial progenitor realm. There was a huge gap between the laws of the heavens and earth that the cultivators had comprehended. Jin Lingxiao's cultivation was at the 4th layer martial progenitor realm. The reinforcements from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residence were at the 2nd layer and 3rd layer martial progenitor realm. They had to team up against Jin Lingxiao, who was using his full strength. The difference in the number of people and the strength of their cultivators was the reason. As a result, the battle between the martial progenitors of the 3 great factions had yet to come to a conclusion after almost an entire day. Qin Yu's eyes flickered with a sinister murderous intent. The Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents had completely infuriated him. This time, he would make them pay with their blood. Using the earth-escaping technique, Qin Yu was rapidly shuttling through the ground. Several formation flags were inserted deep into the ground. Countless runes were emitted, forming a giant, obscure formation. Even though over 30 martial progenitors were below the third-layer martial progenitor realm. However, to the current Qin Yu, it was also a power that he was unable to match. Therefore, not only did Qin Yu have to rely on the power of the formation, he also had to rely on the martial progenitor realm beasts of the 100 Beast Palace. The three great factions were currently on par with one another. However, Qin Yu's presence was the key to crushing the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents. Buzz buzz buzz. As the formation flags were inserted into the ground, the formation runes connected with one another. Qin Yu, who was at the center of the formation, flung his palm forward. The flesh on his arm exploded as the heaven-executing formation and the murderous intent of the gods merged with the core of the formation. Following this, the murderous intent penetrated the formation runes. Following this, a clear sound of a formation could be heard. A formation ripple? The martial progenitors who were in the midst of a chaotic battle were instantly aware of it, causing them to be on alert. They were unsure if the person who had set up the formation was on their side. Bang! However, before they could react, a thunderous explosion took place, causing the rift to tremble violently. The martial progenitors could feel a tremendous suppression descending upon them. The suppression of the formation was so terrifying that even someone as strong as Jin Lingxiao could feel his body sinking slightly while wearing a stern expression. Beneath that vast oppressive might was a killing intent that caused his heart to palpitate. The chaotic battle between the two sides came to a stop. The rift within 1,000 li around them was filled with runes. A terrifying suppression and murderous intent could be felt roaming among the runes. Whoosh! A figure appeared from the ground below the battlefield. Kill. Following this, Qin Yu changed his hand seal. The monstrous killing formation that filled the sky immediately erupted like a volcano and went berserk. Chapter 220. At that instant, the rift within 1,000 li was encapsulated by a destructive murderous intent. The martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace could feel chills running down their spines. They clearly sensed that the murderous intent of the formation had completely sealed off their escape. It's him. The people of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace lowered their heads and were startled. Qin Yu. Qin Yu, who had been missing for a long time, had appeared again. Did he go to the Heavenly Dragon continent? The lightning progenitor of the Snow Marquis Palace wore an unpleasant expression when he saw Qin Yu staring at them coldly. Judging from the time, it would take around a day to travel to the Heavenly Dragon continent and return. However, the Heavenly Dragon continent had sent 2 martial progenitors. Even though Qin Yu was a sacred formation master, his cultivation was only in the Wu Sheng realm after all. It was impossible for him to save the Qin clan from 2 martial progenitors, right? Could it be that the 100 Beast Palace had secretly sent another martial progenitor to the Heavenly Dragon continent? Qin Yu. Jin Lingxiao's eyes flickered when he saw Qin Yu. Previously, when he was trying to break the 9-layered ground blazing formation, he had planned to send 2 martial progenitors to the Heavenly Dragon continent with Qin Yu. However, Qin Yu had rejected his offer. Seeing that Qin Yu was no longer in a rush, it was obvious that the Qin clan had escaped from their predicament. Attack! Jin Lingxiao immediately collected his thoughts as golden flames burst out from his body like a scorching sun. They had initially been helpless against the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace. However, with the help of the peak sacred formation that Qin Yu had constructed, the situation was completely different. Roar roar roar! Hai Tianjia and the rest of the martial progenitors revealed their true forms. Rolling beastly auras swept across the place, suppressing everything. Retreat! The lightning progenitor glanced at Qin Yu in a sinister manner and immediately gave the order to retreat. Trying to run away? Qin Yu wore an icy expression while his eyes were filled with murderous intent. Today, He would kill every single martial progenitor from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace. Seal. Within the divine dragon ancient seal, a dragon roar resounded. The dragon runes on the dragon's soul bloomed with dazzling light as it executed its supernatural ability. The entire space of the killing array was immediately enveloped by the power of space-time. The martial progenitor realm cultivators of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Mansion who were trying to retreat were slowed down. What's going on? Space is distorted. The thunderous man's expression changed drastically. At this moment, the void around him seemed to have become the surface of the water. One could clearly see circles of ripples. Normally, they wouldn't care about this kind of delay. But now, he was facing a group of martial ancestors of the same level. Even if it was the slightest flaw, it would still be extremely fatal, let alone slowing down one's speed. Rumble. Jin Lingxiao and the rest of the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace immediately unleashed their auras after being aware of the situation. Waves of violent laws of nature gathered and attacked the Sky Crane Valley, Snow Marquis residents, and the martial progenitors. Boom. Boom. Qin Yu, whose eyes were cold, quickly formed hand seals to control the killing intent of the formation. He continued to attack the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis sect. Under his outstanding control, the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace were not affected by the attacks. The martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis sect were being attacked continuously. Qin Yu's attacks were all condensed from the power of the entire formation array. They were all aimed at a single martial ancestor to launch a sudden attack. Even if it was an ordinary killing formation of the peak sacred realm, even the first-layer martial progenitors had to be treated seriously. Now that they were being held back by cultivators of the same level, it would be worse if they were attacked by the killing formation. Bang bang bang. Under the influence of the power of spacetime and the continuous attacks of the killing formation, the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents were severely injured. Once they were severely injured, the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace could only beat them up. Finally, under the ferocious attacks, a first-layer martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis residents was caught by a three-eyed mystical beast and penetrated his head with a destructive beam. However, at that instant, the martial progenitor's soul immediately left his body and dodged the fatal attack. Die. Unfortunately, Qin Yu, who was in control of the battle, was aware of the situation. The soul-devouring curse flickered in the sky and devoured the soul of the martial progenitor. Damn it! The thunderous martial progenitor uttered a furious roar as his veins popped out. However, he was completely suppressed by Jin Lingxiao, unable to escape. If it weren't for the 9 martial progenitors helping him, he would not even be able to protect himself. Bang bang! After the first martial progenitor was killed, the second and third martial progenitor appeared one after another. Even though those that were killed were first-layer martial progenitors. To the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents, every time a martial progenitor was killed, their situation would worsen. Jin Lingxiao, Hai Tianjia, and the rest of the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace attacked even more fiercely. If they could eliminate over 30 martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents in one fell swoop. Even if the two sects were to unite in the future, the 100-Beast Palace would not need to be intimidated. It was a great opportunity that they could not let go of. Normally, there were only around 20 martial progenitors in the 100 martial realm. The 3 sects each had 40 martial progenitors, thus they were considered powerful in the 100 martial realm. Once these 30 martial progenitors were eliminated, it would be a devastating blow to the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents. Phew. As Qin Yu controlled the killing formation to severely injure or even kill the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents, a breeze blew toward them silently. Ambush. Time reversal. The eyes of the dragon spirit flickered as it immediately executed its spacetime ability. The 10,000 feet surrounding Qin Yu had turned into a muddy swamp. Heaven-battling azure dragon. Sky-devouring dragon seal. Qin Yu's eyes widened. He had no choice but to use his trump card in the nick of time. A magnificent dragon might burst out. Puff. Despite that, Qin Yu was still severely injured, as a huge bloody hole appeared on his left abdomen. If it weren't for the dragon spirit that had comprehended the spacetime ability, the attack would have shattered Qin Yu's heart into pieces. Space-related secret technique. The dragon qi in his body surged, stopping the bleeding from the wound. Qin Yu raised his eyelids and stared coldly at the person who had almost ambushed him. It was obvious that the person had been observing him for a long time. The time of the sneak attack was the instant when Qin Yu was controlling the power of the slaughtering formation to kill another martial ancestor. The moment Qin Yu made his move, he had placed all his attention on controlling the killing formation, thus his defense was the most lax. Who's that? Demonic qi. The sudden change caused the people in the killing formation to panic. Jin Lingxiao and the rest of the martial progenitors who were in the middle of the battle stared at the person who had appeared. The person who had ambushed Qin Yu was wearing a black robe with a terrifying demonic qi. It was the martial progenitor of the heavenly demon sect. My cultivation has increased by a whole level in an instant. What kind of secret technique is that? That black-gowned man had a pair of sinister green eyes under his black gown. He was staring at Qin Yu with great interest. A peak martial god realm cultivation, no wonder he was able to snatch the sacred seal from the hands of the heavenly demon sect's chief. Second layer martial progenitor realm. Qin Yu raised his eyebrows. He had clearly sealed the sacred seal of the demon tribe. He had no idea how the people of the heavenly demon sect had found him. You should know why I'm here. Hand over the sacred seal and we'll leave. I won't take part in the battle between the three sects. While the black-robed person was speaking, several figures appeared out of nowhere in the distance. Chapter 221. Those who had appeared. 3 martial progenitors, 5 half-martial progenitors, and 17 peak martial gods. Such strength was on a completely different level compared to the 3 great factions. However, in the current situation, it seemed to be quite heavy. Where did these demonic cultivators come from? The faces of Jin Lingxiao and the rest of the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace sank with murderous intent. It was the best time to eliminate the top forces of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents. They did not expect a bunch of demonic cultivators to appear all of a sudden. However, the people of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents were startled. The reason why they had ended up in such a situation. The most important reason for that was because Qin Yu was controlling this killing array. If the demonic cultivators were able to keep Qin Yu busy, they would have a chance to escape. You're leaving after taking the seal? Qin Yu glanced at the black-robed cultivator coldly. That's right. The black-robed cultivator nodded slightly. Their target was only the demonic cultivator's sacred seal. They had no intention of being involved in the battle between the 3 great factions. All right, here you go. Qin Yu flicked his finger, firing an ancient box toward the black-robed cultivator. The black-robed cultivator flung his sleeve, causing the rules of the heavens and earth to tremble and wrap around the ancient box. Crap. However, as soon as the ancient box made contact with the box, it exploded. Countless ancient and profound talisman markings erupted like volcanoes and instantly filled more than half of the world. The killing formation immediately expanded by more than 3 times after merging with the runes. The people of the heavenly demon sect were encapsulated by the killing formation before they could react. The frightening pressure and surging killing intent pressed down on them even more valiantly. Apart from the 4 martial progenitors, the half-martial progenitors and martial gods were instantly turned into a bloody mist. 7 true dragon flashes. Extreme speed intent. Qin Yu held the spear in his hand and dashed toward the 4 cultivators of the heavenly demon sect. There was no way Qin Yu would let go of the sacred seal that contained clues about the ancestral dragon. He had almost died from the sneak attack alone, and had even used the heaven-battling azure dragon and the heaven-devouring dragon seal. This had already caused Qin Yu to have the intention to kill them. He had no intention of letting them go. The Myriad Ghost Palace had never been able to track him down because he had never exposed these divine abilities and secret techniques. If they let the Sky Demon cultists go, it wouldn't take long for them to launch a full-scale attack. For the current Qin Yu, this was something that he had to avoid. You're courting death. Seeing that Qin Yu had instantly cut down the rest of the Sky Demon cult, the black-robed man's killing intent went berserk. He slapped out with his palm, and the laws of heaven and earth gathered to form a demonic seal that was 1,000 feet in size. The other 3 martial progenitor realm custodians of the heavenly demon cult appeared around Qin Yu with ferocious murderous intent. Break. The spirit tattoo on Qin Yu's left palm glowed. The monstrous killing array was like an enraged ancient beast, its killing intent sweeping out like a tsunami. Peng peng peng. The 3 martial progenitor realm guards who were trying to trap Qin Yu were immediately sent flying. 9 Hell's Purgatory. Ghost Eye of Extermination. Ancient space-time formation. With a flicker, Qin Yu's figure moved sideways, dodging the 100-jong demonic seal that was suppressing him. As soon as he moved sideways, dragon scales surfaced on Qin Yu's body while the ghost eye in his eyes flickered. The ancient space-time formation was activated. Several trump cards were executed at the same time, aiming at one of the martial progenitor realm guards. The martial progenitor realm guard who had already lost control of the laws of heaven and earth due to the impact of the killing array was severely injured and vomited blood. Heavenly Stellar Sacred Ray. Qin Yu did not stop attacking as the star dragon seal on his forehead appeared, firing a beam of sacred ray. Before the martial progenitor realm guard could react, his forehead was penetrated by the sacred ray, which shattered his soul. How is this possible? The black-robed man who was controlling the demonic seal to suppress Qin Yu blurted out in astonishment. The other 2 martial progenitors of the heavenly demon cult stared with their eyes open wide in disbelief. Qin Yu had slain a martial progenitor realm guard? What the hell? The 2 martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley who had been observing the battle between Qin Yu and the heavenly demon cult were astounded too. Even though Qin Yu was able to control the peak sacred killing formation, he had still managed to kill a martial progenitor with ease. This was too heaven-defying. That was a real martial progenitor. Even if they could defeat a martial progenitor of the same level, it would be difficult for them to kill one. Defeating and killing were 2 completely different levels of meaning. It's no wonder why I sensed danger from him. Jin Lingxiao couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. At this moment, Qin Yu was making his heart palpitate even more. So strong. Hai Tianjia and the other experts of the 100 Beast Palace were also extremely shocked. They looked at the scene in a daze. Only now did they realize that their understanding of Qin Yu was pitifully small. Not only were the alchemy and array saints strong enough to kill martial progenitors, he really didn't know what kind of monster Qin Yu was. Meanwhile, a few hundred li away from the immortal ancient battlefield, a figure was hiding on top of a mountain. The person's eyes were covered in a faint blue glow, as if his eyes were made of blue crystals. Most shockingly, even though the person was a few hundred li away from where the battle between the 3 sects was taking place, however, the scene of the battle between the 3 sects was clearly displayed in his eyes. The mystical ability of the dragon tribe, an ancient killing formation, finally, found you. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. In the air, Qin Yu ignored the astounded gazes. He saw the black-robed cultivator summoning a 100-jong demonic seal in his direction. Qin Yu thrust forward with his spear, resulting in a deafening roar of a dragon. The heaven-devouring dragon seal appeared and sprang into the sky with a tremendous dragon might. It collided with the 100-jong demonic seal, stopping it in mid-air. Whoosh! Qin Yu's figure flickered rapidly and appeared not far away from the black-robed cultivator. The overwhelming killing formation and the suppression of the ancient space-time killing formation. Meanwhile, with the black-robed cultivator at the center, it immediately suppressed him and sealed off his escape. Demonic curse break. The black-robed cultivator performed a hand seal as his body was covered in demonic curses, causing his aura to skyrocket. A shocking demonic aura burst out from his body, trying to shatter the suppression of the double killing formation. Die. Forbidden art, immortal sacrifice. The 9 Netherworld dragon spear shuddered as a blinding white glow gathered and transformed into a meteor that flashed across the sky. The black-robed cultivator covered in demonic runes stiffened as his head was penetrated by the spear. As long as the immortal sacrifice art was not dodged, an ordinary martial progenitor would die without a doubt. Even a second-layer martial progenitor, The two custodians of the heavenly demon sect who were charging toward the black-robed cultivator froze in place, unable to conceal the terror in their eyes. What kind of secret technique was that? In addition to the two custodians of the heavenly demon sect, the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace, Sky Crane Valley, and Snow Marquis Palace were astounded too. Meanwhile, Qin Yu, who was covered in dragon scales and surrounded by a blue dragon aura and holding a spear in his hand. In their eyes, it was as if the god of death had descended upon the world, unstoppable. Die. The dragon spear shuddered as Qin Yu charged at the two martial progenitors without hesitation. The two martial progenitors realized that they were trapped in the killing formation and were unable to escape. Like ferocious beasts facing death, they attacked Qin Yu together ferociously. It was obvious that they were trying to drag Qin Yu down with them even when they were about to die. However, with the dragon soul controlling the power of time and space, it was able to alter the flow of time in the rift. Despite their outstanding strength, the two martial gods were still killed by the double killing formation and the immortal sacrifice art. As such, the people of the heavenly demon sect had all been slain by Qin Yu. P.S. I've created a group, 7110743885. Those who are interested can join. Chapter 222. Too much blood essence has been consumed. The dragon god sensed the condition of Qin Yu's body from the dragon god ancient seal. The four martial progenitors of the heavenly demon sect. Apart from the first martial progenitor who was killed by the heavenly stellar sacred ray due to his carelessness, the other three were killed by the immortal sacrificial art. The power of the immortal sacrificial art was unquestionable. However, it consumed a great amount of blood essence too, including the two martial progenitors at the Blood Mist Devil Valley. In just a day, Qin Yu had used the immortal sacrificial art 5 times. Even though Qin Yu's flesh was outstanding and his blood essence was boiling, it was not enough for him to endure the consumption. I know. Qin Yu was well aware of the consumption of blood essence by the immortal sacrificial art. However, he had no choice but to use the immortal sacrificial art continuously. Otherwise, it would bring him great trouble if the Azure Dragon Battle Seal and the Heaven-Devouring Dragon Seal were exposed. After storing the corpses of the heavenly demon sect's martial progenitors, Qin Yu glanced at the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace. Crap! Break the formation. The lightning progenitor's heart pounded rapidly. He had witnessed how Qin Yu had slain the 4 martial progenitors with ease. The current him would no longer consider Qin Yu to be a simple saint-level array master. Bang! With an intention from Qin Yu, the overflowing slaughtering array started to move violently. The ancient spacetime slaughtering array also started to sweep forth. Since his trump card had been exposed, Qin Yu had no reason to hide it any further. He executed the secret skills of the battle dragon and the martial arts of the dragon tribe to suppress the enemy. Damn it! Break it! The lightning progenitor and the others uttered furious roars as the terrifying force of the rules of cultivation trembled the rift. However, under the influence of the 2 great slaughter formations and the spacetime force, they were greatly affected. Kill! Jin Lingxiao and the rest of the martial progenitors of the Beast Palace immediately reacted and charged forward. Even though they were astounded by Qin Yu's shocking strength, their priority now was to eliminate the people of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace. Once they missed the opportunity, they would never have another chance to do so. Bang bang bang, with Qin Yu going all out, the might of the double killing formation became even more terrifying. The martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis residents were completely suppressed. Jin Lingxiao had thoroughly displayed the strength of the 4th-layer martial progenitor realm. Every martial progenitor who was severely injured by Qin Yu was slain within a few moves. In less than a quarter of an hour, almost half of the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace were dead. The fewer people there were, the more dangerous it would be for the 2 sects. If you want my life, you'll have to exchange it with yours. A 2nd-layer martial progenitor of the Snow Marquis mansion uttered a furious roar. Boundless power of laws condensed in his dantian, and a terrifying destructive wave spread out. Trying to escape with your soul again? A cold smile appeared in Qin Yu's eyes. Last time in Guiyuan City, the armored brawny man from the Snow Marquis residence had used the self-detonation method to escape. This time, since you want to self-destruct, I'll give you a hand. Qin Yu's true energy shuddered as it merged with the dragon's spear. The power of the double slaughtering formation gathered at the tip of the spear, turning it into a crystal-like spear glow. Whoosh! Under the martial progenitor's terrified gaze, the spear glow struck his figure. Bang! A thunderous explosion took place, as the area within a few thousand zhong was covered in the destructive rules of the heavens and earth. The people of the 100-Beast Palace were not affected by the impact due to the protection of the double slaughtering formation and their own defense. However, the martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Mansion were severely injured. Puff puff puff. Qin Yu, Jin Lingxiao, and the others took advantage of the opportunity to kill around 8 martial progenitors in an instant. Only 5 martial progenitors were still trying their best to hold on. Are we going to die here? The strongest among them was the lightning progenitor. Seeing the people of the 100-Beast Palace surrounding them, his eyes flickered with despair. The gap between them was getting bigger, and they were trapped in the double slaughtering formation. There was no way they could escape no matter how hard they struggled. Rumble. Along with the earth-shattering sound of the explosion, the last 5 martial progenitors of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Mansion were slain. The battle had come to an end. Hai Tianjia and the rest of the martial progenitors of the 100-Beast Palace were in disbelief. Over 30 martial progenitors, it was equivalent to eliminating a mid-tier faction. None of them had died, and they had managed to eliminate all the enemies. Having this thought, the people of the 100-Beast Palace subconsciously glanced at Qin Yu. In this battle, Qin Yu could be said to have played an absolute role. The strength of an advanced sacred formation master was too shocking. Come, let's return to the palace. Jin Lingxiao withdrew his gaze and returned to the 100-Beast Palace. The Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Mansion had lost so many martial progenitors. The experts of the two sects would surely be aware of it. The ancient battlefield was not a place they could stay for long. The ancient battlefield fell into a dead silence once again. However, after some time, the rift shuddered slightly as a figure appeared. It was none other than the one-armed old man in a grey robe. The one-armed old man arrived at the rift where the 3 sects were fighting. He glanced in the direction that Qin Yu and the others had left in. Following this, he disappeared into thin air with a kick. Half a day later, Qin Yu, Jin Lingxiao, and the others returned to the 100-Beast Palace. Qin Yu immediately entered the ancient seal of the mystical dragon to cultivate in seclusion after settling his parents and people down. Even though he had managed to eliminate the martial progenitors of the Sky Demon sect, the Snow Marquis Mansion, and the Sky Crane Valley. However, Qin Yu had basically exposed all his trump cards. Luckily, only the martial progenitor realm elders of the 100-Beast Palace knew about it. If the people of the Sky Crane Valley and the other sects managed to escape, they would be in great trouble. Therefore, Qin Yu's priority after returning to the 100-Beast Palace was to rank up to the Martial God Realm. Only when he reached the Martial God Realm would he have the ability to protect himself. Little did Qin Yu know, the thing that he was worried about had already happened, in the 10,000 Ghost Realm that was extremely far away from the 100-Beast Palace. A man with dark blue eyes walked out of a teleportation formation and swiftly entered the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The man was none other than the blue-eyed man who had witnessed Qin Yu's battle at the ancient battlefield. A moment later, the blue-eyed man entered a magnificent hall. Did you just say you found the person? Mo Lihuang, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes after hearing the blue-eyed man's words. I was ordered by Elder Lu to go to the 100-Beast Palace and found the person he was looking for. The eyes of the blue-eyed man kneeling on the ground flickered with a blue glow. In the span of a few breaths, various scenes flashed across his eyes. That's right, it's him, it's him. Even though Mo Lihuang had only familiarized himself with Qin Yu, he immediately recognized him. The mystical abilities of the Dragon Tribe, the secret eye technique, the ancient killing formation, the space-time force, and a sacred formation master. In the entire 100 martial realm, one could not find a second person with such means. However, to Mo Lihuang's surprise, The person who had fought against him was only 17 years old. Such talent, such combat strength, it was truly shocking. He has the ability to kill a second-layer martial progenitor instantly. Mo Lihuang soon calmed his thoughts. Even though he found it hard to believe Qin Yu's strength, he had achieved such a terrifying breakthrough in just a few months' time. However, after witnessing Qin Yu's battle, he knew that he would not be able to defeat Qin Yu on his own. Even though he was from the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction, his strength greatly surpassed the strength of an ordinary second-layer martial progenitor. However, if he were to fight Qin Yu on his own, he would most likely be the one fleeing for his life. He would not do anything that would alert the enemy. Chapter 223. Mo Lihuang pondered for a moment, before he left the palace and went to an eerie ancient pagoda. Inside the ancient pagoda was a pitch-black cauldron. A ghastly aura was rolling inside the cauldron, accompanied by the cries of ferocious spirits. A figure was sitting with his legs crossed inside the ghastly aura. It was a man who was as thin as firewood and looked like a skeleton. However, the skeleton man's aura was quite shocking. He had reached the 7th-layer martial progenitor realm. In the 100 martial realm, a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator was considered one of the top experts. 9th senior brother. Mo Lihuang went to the ancient pagoda and glanced at the skeleton man with a hint of fear. He was not the only one from the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction in the 10,000 Ghost Palace. However, among them, his cultivation was the weakest. He was only at the 2nd-layer martial progenitor realm. Therefore, the task of overseeing Luogui City fell on him. The skeleton man was none other than Mo Lihuang's senior brother, Jiyu Tianlang. 17th junior brother, why are you here instead of cultivating in the Luogui City? Jiyu Tianlang's eyes remained closed. His lips moved slightly, yet a hoarse voice was heard. I've found the whereabouts of the 1st saint and the 7th saint. Mo Lihuang said. Bang! As soon as Mo Lihuang finished the sentence, a terrifying rule of the Ghost Dao burst out like a rolling tide. Jiyu Tianlang's eyes sprang open. His eyes were filled with bloodlust as if they were made of blood. Is that true? Jiyu Tianlang stared at Mo Lihuang. He had always been focusing on his cultivation, thus he had never cared about what was going on outside. As such, he had no idea what Mo Lihuang had been up to for the past few months. If he knew about it, he would have made a move long ago. Whoosh whoosh. Mo Lihuang waved his right hand, sending a few pieces of bones to Jiyu Tianlang. They are indeed the natal ghost runes of the 1st saint and the 7th saint. Jiyu Tianlang rose to his feet in excitement after taking a glimpse. His eyes flickered with a crimson flicker. He has merged the natal ghost runes of the 1st saint and the 7th saint into his puppets. A blue crystal appeared in Mo Lihuang's hand. The scene that appeared in the blue-eyed man's eyes appeared in the crystal once again. Hey! This is the Great Holy Sun's 9 Hells Purgatory Dragon's 9 Hells Purgatory ability. After watching the battle, Jiyu Tianlang stared at the pitch-black dragon scales on Qin Yu's body with his bloody eyes. 9 Hells Purgatory Dragon? Mo Lihuang was taken aback and also looked at the dragon scales on Qin Yu's body. The Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's bloodline had always respected the strong. Their status and strength were in direct contrast. Therefore, while Jiyu Tianlang could recognize the 9 Hells Purgatory Dragon's theurgy, Mo Lihuang didn't. Could this person be the successor of the Great Holy Sun? Jiyu Tianlang's blood-red eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. He had once been fortunate enough to see the 1st saint use the purgatory space. Now that this dragon race mystique had appeared in Qin Yu's body, he couldn't help but speculate. No, his skeletal ghost soldiers are indeed inherited from our lineage's ghost cultivation methods. However, he doesn't cultivate the ghost Dao. Mo Lihuang was quite sure about it. Even though Qin Yu had many secret arts and moves, he was definitely not practicing the path of ghost cultivators. Does that mean he only found the remains of the Great Holy Sun and the 7th saint? Jiyu Tianlang glanced at Jin Lingxiao and the others. Beast tribe? The Palace of 100 Beasts. That's right, I've investigated it. The kid is an advanced sacred formation master. He's an elder of the Palace of 100 Beast. Mo Lihuang nodded slightly. Jiyu Tianlang glanced at Mo Lehuang with a hint of a smile. Qin Yu had the strength to kill a second-layer martial progenitor, and the Palace of 100 Beasts was supporting him. No wonder Mo Lehuang had come looking for him. If Mo Lehuang was strong enough, he would have taken all the credit for himself. After all, the person who found the ancient immortal badge would be accepted as the core disciple of the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor. Send out the order of 10,000 ghosts, summon all the martial progenitors. Jiyu Tianlang stepped forward and waved his right hand, putting the pitch-black palace into his sleeve. Summon the martial progenitors. Ninth senior brother, is there a need to make such a big fuss just to deal with the kid? Mo Lehuang was confused. It's easy to capture the kid, but if the Palace of 100 Beasts is involved, he might be able to escape. Jiyu Tianlang left the ancient pagoda. It's just a mid-tier faction. I don't think they would dare to oppose us. Mo Lehuang immediately followed behind him. I've fought the palace master of the Palace of 100 Beasts before. His strength isn't any weaker than mine. As a safety precaution, we need the strength to suppress the entire Palace of 100 Beasts. Jiyu Tianlang licked his lips as his eyes flickered with astonishment. What if third senior brother knows about it? Mo Lehuang hesitated. Third senior brother has been in seclusion for 60 years. It's impossible for him to come out so coincidentally. Once it's over, we'll return to the heaven realm at once. Jiyu Tianlang halted in his tracks and said, Sure. When Mo Lehuang heard this, his expression became rather excited. 2 days later, at the Palace of 100 Beasts in the Tianyuan region. Is what you said true? Jin Lingxiao suddenly opened his eyes. Golden flames burned in his pupils, giving off an astonishing aura. It's absolutely true. Elder Qin indeed inquired about Ghost Civ City, and when Ghost Civ City was destroyed, Elder Qin just so happened to disappear from God-Burying Ridge. In front of Jin Lingxiao was the nine-tailed Fox King, who had recently reached the martial ancestor realm. Because of this, I even specially inquired about the Luogui city. In the end, I discovered that the information that the 10,000 Ghost Palace was looking for was extremely similar to the secret technique that Elder Qin Yu used. Although she had reached the martial ancestor realm because of Qin Yu's 9-turn blood spirit pill, this matter was related to the life and death of all the monsters in the Palace of 100 Beasts. After the nine-tailed Fox King received the news, she didn't dare to hide anything. I'm going to see the palace master. Jin Lingxiao abruptly stood up and left. This was no small matter. It wasn't something that a vice-palace master like him could decide. Soon, Jin Lingxiao arrived at the Palace of 100 Beasts, in an ancient cave that flickered with 7-colored light. Inside the 7-colored ancient cave, there was a 100-foot light blue ball of light. A vast pressure was emitted from the light blue ball of light. Palace Master. Jin Lingxiao knelt on one knee and bowed respectfully. What's the matter? A cold voice sounded from the light blue ball of light. It's like this. Jin Lingxiao quickly explained the matter of Qin Yu in detail. Ghost Palace? A murmur sounded. The light blue ball of light gradually converged and turned into a graceful figure. It was a beautiful woman in a blue robe. On the woman's fair face, there were faint blue beast patterns that added to her charm. Very few people in the 100 Martial Realm knew that the mysterious palace master of the Palace of 100 Beasts was a woman. He's not in the palace. A circle of blue light emitted from the blue-robed woman's body, covering the entire Palace of 100 Beasts. After a while, her eyebrows moved slightly and she asked, Elder Qin should still be in seclusion. Jin Lingxiao was startled as he said, Whoosh. The eyes of the blue-robed woman flickered as she disappeared with a kick with Jin Lingxiao. Meanwhile, inside the ancient seal of the mystical dragon, Fu, Qin Yu, who had been in seclusion for 10 days, slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were filled with a dragon aura. I finally achieved the martial god realm. The dragon spirit whose cultivation had reached the peak of the Wu Sheng realm. Its eyes flickered with joy when it sensed the 5 ultimacies of the heavens and earth from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's cultivation had reached the martial god level. The increase in his strength was not a small amount at all. Now, Qin Yu could easily kill ordinary martial progenitors without using the art of sacrifice. Chapter 224. Martial God Realm, it's time to leave. Qin Yu stood up, clenched his fists, and revealed a smile. After entering the Martial God Realm, the true essence in his body was as vast as the sea, unfathomable. The 5 great mysteries of heaven and earth that he comprehended were also mysterious and unfathomable, and his strength had soared by several levels. Qin Yu's main purpose in coming to the 100 Martial Realm was to find the dragon blood. Since the dragon soul did not sense the existence of the dragon race in the 100 Martial Realm, naturally, there was no need for Qin Yu to continue staying in the 100 Martial Realm. Suddenly, Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. 2 auras appeared outside the palace. One was Jin Lingxiao, and the other's aura was very unfamiliar, and the pressure far surpassed Jin Lingxiao. Could it be the palace master of the 100 Beast Palace? With a flash of thought, Qin Yu dispersed the palace's barrier and opened the door. Jin Lingxiao and the blue-robed woman appeared in front of Qin Yu's eyes. Elder Qin, this is our palace master of the 100 Beast Palace. Jin Lingxiao introduced to Qin Yu. Celestial Qilin race. Qin Yu sized up the blue-robed woman, slightly surprised. He did not expect that the palace master of the 100 Beast Palace was actually a half-monster. Of course, the monster race bloodline in the blue-robed woman's body was not simple. The Celestial Qilin race was a divine beast, the descendants of the Celestial Qilin, and their talent was extraordinary. Looking at the blue-robed woman's situation, it seemed that she was in the bloodline transformation period. What a strong dragon chi fluctuation! Xu Xiaoye looked at Qin Yu, and a strange light flickered in her eyes. Although she heard that Qin Yu had dragon blood in his body, she still did not expect that Qin Yu's dragon blood would be so strong. Elder Qin, we came here to know if the matter of Luogui City has anything to do with you. After entering the palace, Jin Lingxiao did not talk nonsense and went straight to the point. You were found out so quickly? The dragon soul was somewhat glad that Qin Yu immediately went into seclusion to break through after returning. Now that his cultivation had advanced to the martial god realm, even if the matter was exposed, Qin Yu would not be so passive. That's right. Qin Yu did not deny it. Since Jin Lingxiao and Xu Xiaoye had come in person, they must have confirmed this matter. Since Qin Yu was about to leave, he might as well take the opportunity to leave. It's really you? Jin Lingxiao's expression was solemn. At first, he didn't believe it. After all, Qin Yu had just arrived at the 100 Martial Realm, and it was unlikely that he would provoke the 10,000 Ghost Palace. I heard that you can refine more than 10-9 revolutions blood spirit pills. Qin Yu was about to speak when Xu Xiaoye suddenly spoke. Yes. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Then can you refine the Ice Heart Heavenly Spirit pill? Xu Xiaoye stared at Qin Yu as she asked. Icy Heart Heavenly Spirit pill? No pill saint can refine a divine pill. Qin Yu shook his head. The Ice Heart Heavenly Spirit pill was similar to the 9 Transformations Blood Spirit pill. Both of them could awaken the bloodline of the demon race to the greatest extent. But the difference was that the Ice Heart Heavenly Spirit pill was only useful for half-demon bodies. The 9 Transformations Blood Spirit pill had no effect on half-demon bodies. Xu Xiaoye obviously wanted to use the Ice Heart Heavenly Spirit pill to completely transform the Qilin bloodline in her body. But the Ice Heart Blood Spirit pill was a true divine-grade spirit pill. With Qin Yu's current cultivation, he could only refine a top sacred grade spirit pill at most. Xu Xiaoye's eyes dimmed slightly, but she wasn't disappointed. Obviously, she was mentally prepared. But at this moment, the dragon soul suddenly sensed something, and the dragon scales all over its body lit up. What's wrong? Qin Yu asked. The void within tens of thousands of miles around the 100 Beast Palace has been sealed. The dragon soul's voice was solemn. The sealed void meant that teleportation couldn't be done. Could it be that the 100 Beast Palace wanted to attack Qin Yu? Whoosh! Qin Yu's eyes turned cold. After glancing at Jin Lingxiao and Xu Xiaoye, he immediately flashed into the inner hall. With a flash of the tricolored light, Qin Yu's parents and the members of the Qin clan were sucked into the tri-layered universe ring. This ripple, at this moment, Xu Xiaoye also sensed something. She rushed out of the palace and flew into the air, staring into the distance. The void is sealed. What's going on? Jin Lingxiao, who was following closely behind, had a drastic change in expression. To be able to turn the entire 100-beast palace into a cage without them noticing. A mid-tier faction would definitely not have such means. Could it be, it's the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Inform all the martial progenitor realm elders immediately. Xu Xiaoya's eyes were filled with cold murderous intent. She sensed the ghostly aura in the distance. Qin Yu, who had just rushed out of the palace, was startled when he noticed the murderous intent in Xu Xiaoya's eyes. Could it be that Xu Xiaoya had a grudge against the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Previously, Xu Xiaoya only cared about whether he could refine the Iceheart Heavenly Spirit Pill. She didn't seem to care that he had offended the 10,000 Ghost Palace. What's going on? Such a terrifying aura. Is that the palace leader? At that instant, as the ghostly aura approached from the distance, a frightening pressure that could shake the heavens and the earth came pressing down on them. Without needing Jin Lingxiao to notify them, the martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace immediately gathered. There were a total of 47 martial progenitors. Xu Xiaoya was the strongest among them, with a 7th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivation. Jin Lingxiao was the only 4th-layer martial progenitor. There were 6 3rd-layer martial progenitors, 19 2nd-layer martial progenitors, and the rest were 1st-layer martial progenitors. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace arrived with a formidable aura. The one leading them was none other than Jiyu Tianlang. Behind Jiyu Tianlang, there were 9 6th-layer martial progenitors and 14 5th-layer martial progenitors. Jiyu Tianlang's strength alone was enough to deal with the people of the 100-beast palace. Not to mention, there were over 100 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The difference between a top-tier faction and a mid-tier faction was clearly displayed at this moment. Not far away from the 10,000 Ghost Palace, there were 30 figures in the martial progenitor realm. They were from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace that had received the news. 10,000 Ghost Palace? What's going on? Why would the 10,000 Ghost Palace send so many martial progenitor realm experts here? Look, it's the people of the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace. Could it be that the 10,000 Ghost Palace is here to avenge them? I thought the top-tier factions would never interfere with the conflicts of other factions. The martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace were startled, as a terrifying aura spread among the crowd. Such strength was already sufficient to completely annihilate their 100-beast palace. Buzz buzz buzz. Xu Xiaoya flung her sleeve, causing the sky above the 100-beast palace to be filled with obscure runes. At that instant, the 100-beast palace that covered an area of over 10,000 li was encapsulated by a giant formation. Miss Xiaoya, it's been a while. The people of the 10,000 Ghost Palace stopped outside the barrier. The skinny Jiyu Tianlang stepped forward and glanced at Xu Xiaoya with flickering eyes. Judging from his tone, it seemed like he was quite familiar with Xu Xiaoya. Bringing so many people here, are you planning to harm the 100-beast palace? Xu Xiaoya stared at Jiyu Tianlang coldly with a hint of murderous intent, as if she was holding a grudge against him. Why would I? I'm here for that kid. He's the culprit that destroyed the main city of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. A smile appeared on Jiyu Tianlang's face, which was even more terrifying. Elder Qin. The martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace glanced at Jiyu Tianlang after hearing his words. Destroyed the main city of the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Could it be that Elder Qin was responsible for the destruction of the Luogui city? The martial progenitors of the 100-beast palace were aware of the reason, but they could not believe it. They knew that Qin Yu was strong, but he would not dare to provoke a top-tier faction, right? Chapter 225. I see. I was wondering why the 10,000 Ghost Palace would send such a force. That kid is so reckless. He dares to offend the 10,000 Ghost Palace. I wonder if the 100-beast palace will hand him over. He's just a sacred level formation master. I don't think the 100-beast palace will offend a top faction for him. The Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis's residents began to discuss after learning about the situation. So this is why you sealed the 10,000 Ghost Palace. Xu Xiaoya's eyes turned colder. She knew Jiyu Tianlang's ambition. Qin Yu was just an excuse. Jiyu Tianlong's real target was her. He's a sacred level formation master. I had no choice. Looking at Xu Xiaoye's voluptuous figure, Jiyu Tianlong's eyes were burning with passion. Retreat 1,000 miles and disperse the spatial seal. The 100-beast palace will not interfere in the matters between the two of you. Xu Xiaoye said coldly. That won't do. Jiyu Tianlang rejected right away. Since he had come here with such great fanfare, he wouldn't let go of either Qin Yu or Xu Xiaoye. It would be hard to find such an excuse in the future. It seems like we have to work together. Xu Xiaoye turned around and flicked her finger. An ancient token flew towards Qin Yu. It was the badge that controlled the formation. Qin Yu's cultivation wasn't strong, but a sacred-level formation master would be able to unleash a shocking battle strength under such circumstances. Palace Master Jin Lingxiao and the other martial progenitors were shocked. Xu Xiaoye was obviously going to go against the 10,000 Ghost Palace. But facing the 10,000 Ghost Palace's battle strength, wasn't it courting death? I have a grudge with the 10,000 Ghost Palace. If you're afraid, you can leave with your clans. Xu Xiaoye was unmoved. Her voice was cold. Jin Lingxiao and the other martial progenitors were surprised. It was their first time hearing about this. Leave with their clans? They looked at the Sky Crane Valley and the other two sects behind the 10,000 Ghost Palace. All of them immediately erased the thought. Without Xu Xiaoye, the 100-beast palace's battle strength was far weaker than the two sects. Once they left the palace, even if the 10,000 Ghost Palace did not pursue them, Sky Crane Valley and Snow Marquis residents would not let go of this opportunity. There is indeed a grudge between them. Qin Yu caught the array token and was not surprised. When he noticed Xu Xiaoye's killing intent earlier, he had already guessed it. Qin Yu did not reject Xu Xiaoye's suggestion to join forces. Now that the void was sealed, it was impossible to teleport away. Joining hands with the 100-beast palace was the best choice. Do you recognize what formation this is? Xu Xiaoye said as she looked at Qin Yu. She was testing Qin Yu's array Dao level. If Qin Yu's level was not as amazing as Jin Lingxiao had described, then he would be able to defeat Jin Lingxiao. If that was the case, then it would be better for the formation token to be in her hands. The ancient beast god formation. Unfortunately, it's just an incomplete formation. Spirit tattoos filled Qin Yu's left palm. The formation token instantly trembled slightly, and the heaven-shrouding formation that enveloped the 100-beast palace flickered with runes. A terrifying murderous aura filled the air. The ancient beast god formation was a true divine-grade array. Only a divine-grade array master could set it up. And the ancient beast god formation of the 100-beast palace was obviously just an incomplete formation. It was probably only 1/3 of the power of the true ancient beast god formation. Even so, it was far more powerful than an ordinary pinnacle saint array. After all, it was the sect protection formation of the 100-beast palace, so it was naturally powerful. I'll leave it to you. Xu Xiaoye nodded slightly and looked coldly at the 1,000-ghost palace. There would definitely be a great battle today, and even she did not know whether she would survive. However, the 1,000-ghost palace had to pay the price in blood if they wanted to break through the 100-beast palace. Miss Xiaoye, the 100-year promise left by your master is about to come. It's impossible for you to completely awaken the heavenly Qilin bloodline. Why are you still resisting? Jiyu Tianlang said with a creepy smile on his face. He did not care that Xu Xiaoye had given the ancient beast god formation token to Qin Yu. In front of absolute power, all means were useless. 100-year promise? Heavenly Qilin bloodline? Could she be? Inside the 1,000-ghost palace, Mo Lehuang came to a realization after hearing the conversation. No wonder Jiyu Tianlang had gathered almost half of the martial progenitors of the 1,000-ghost palace. It turned out that apart from the ancient immortal badge in Qin Yu's possession, there was another reason. If you still remember the 100-year promise my master made, have you thought about the consequences of offending us today? Xu Xiaoye seemed to be provoked. Her eyes turned colder as her murderous intent grew stronger. I'm here to capture the criminals of the 1,000-ghost palace. I'm not here to go against my master's promise. However, if you're willing to help, don't blame me for showing no mercy. Jiyu Tianlang gave the order without wasting any time. Over 100 martial progenitors of the Thousand Ghost Palace charged forward with ferocious auras. Bang bang bang. However, as the martial progenitors of the Thousand Ghost Palace were about to make their moves, a series of deep explosions could be heard. Look, the ancient beast god formation is changing. The crowd took a closer look. They discovered that the runes on the ancient beast god formation were flashing across like meteors, like a starry night sky. It was quite pleasing to the eye. However, hidden beneath that beautiful scenery was a killing intent that caused one's heart to palpitate. Qin Yu. Xu Xiaoye immediately reacted and turned her head around. Qin Yu had already flown to the center of the ancient beast god formation after receiving the badge. Lines of ancient and profound formation runes gushed out of his palm and merged with the beast god ancient formation in an instant. That kid. Attack. Jiyu Tianlang's eyelids jumped as he immediately gave the order to attack. He realized that he had underestimated Qin Yu. At that instant, the power of the ancient beast god formation was multiplied. His capabilities were utterly shocking. Bang bang bang. Wisps of ferocious rules of the heavens and earth swept across the place. The ancient beast god formation that was enduring the attacks of over 100 martial progenitors began to shake vigorously. The martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace could feel their hearts rising to their throats. They knew that once the ancient beast god formation was broken, they would be facing the attacks of over 100 martial progenitor realm experts. Turn. A deep roar could be heard all of a sudden. Qin Yu's hands slapped onto the beast god's ancient formation array. His left hand was covered in runes while the badge in his right hand glowed. The ancient beast god formation immediately emitted a mystical glow. On top of the formation, huge spiritual inscriptions appeared, forming a huge 9 palaces formation diagram. The 9 palaces formation seemed to contain some kind of mysterious power. It was able to contain the rules of the heavens and earth. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Following this, a misty grey mist sprang into the sky and covered the entire place. The martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghosts Hall, Sky Crane Valley, and Snow Marquis Palace were surrounded by the mist. 9 palaces formation? What kind of formation is that? Jiyu Tianlang was shocked. He was a 7th layer martial progenitor realm expert, thus he was quite knowledgeable. However, he could not recognize the formation that Qin Yu was executing. More importantly, there was a 9 palaces formation diagram within the mist. Vaguely, the entire sky was divided into 9 huge regions. 9 palaces formation. Xu Xiaoye's eyes flickered as she recognized the formation. The 9 palaces formation was formed by the 9 palaces of Qian, Kan, Zhen, Zhen, Zhong, Zun, Li, Kuan, Dui. It was said that the 9 palaces could split the heavens and earth. However, this ancient killing formation had long been lost in the ancient times. Qin Yu had managed to construct such a killing formation in such a short period of time with the help of the ancient beast god formation. Where did he come from? Chapter 226. The 9 palace mystic heaven formation was in the shape of a Chinese character, covering the sky with mist lingering within it. There were a total of 140 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Hall, the Snow Marquis Palace, and the Sky Crane Valley. However, every martial progenitor was trapped by the 9 palace mystic heaven formation in the 9 palaces. The difference between their martial progenitor realm cultivations was too great. Even with the ancient beast god formation, the 100 Beast Palace had no chance of winning. Therefore, Qin Yu had set up the 9 palace mystic heaven formation. He would eliminate the 10,000 Ghost Hall sooner or later. These people would serve as a form of interest. An illusion formation? No, it's not as simple as an illusion formation. Jiyu Tianlang wore a stern look as he stood alone in the Qian Palace. All he could see was a vast expanse of grey, as if he was in an endless void. He could not see the end of it or where it came from. Even if he were to blast the mist with the power of the heavens and earth, he would not be able to disperse the mist. Jiyu Tianlang knew that something was not right. If even he was affected like this, There was no need to talk about the others. The rift around him exploded as Jiyu Qianlang executed a secret technique and moved forward rapidly. Regardless of the secrets of the 9-palace mystic heaven formation, the 100-beast palace was right in front of him. Apart from Jiyu Qianlang, the martial progenitors in the other areas were trying to break out of the 9-palace mystic heaven formation too. However, in reality, all of them were circling around in various palace diagrams, unable to rush out. Only the 7th-layer martial progenitor Jiyu Qianlang was moving closer to the 100-beast palace. What kind of formation is this? It's trapping over 100 martial progenitors. Isn't that too shocking? Indeed, even an advanced sacred formation master shouldn't be this terrifying. The martial progenitors trapped in the 9-palace mystic heaven formation felt like they were in a boundless illusion. However, the cultivators outside could clearly see what was happening inside the 9-palace mystic heaven formation. The 10,000 Ghost Hall had set up a huge formation. Apart from the Sky Crane Valley and the Snow Marquis Palace, there were other factions observing from afar. Everyone was astounded after witnessing the power of the 9-palace mystic heaven formation. Stop him. Qin Yu transmitted his voice to Xu Xiaoye after sensing that Jiyu Qianlang was about to reach the Qian Palace. Among the martial progenitors, only Xu Xiaoye was able to stop Jiyu Qianlang. Whoosh! Xu Xiaoye understood his intentions. She crossed the void and charged into the Qian Palace with a mighty aura. Jiyu Qianlang, who was flying in the grey fog, sensed something. Ghost Qi erupted from his body as 2 blood-colored ancient seals appeared in his blood-colored eyes. Kai! A sharp arrow flashing with starlight appeared out of nowhere and aimed at Jiyu Qianlang's head. The arrow was so fast that deep ripples appeared in the void like the surface of water. It was as if even this space was a little unstable. Bang! Jiyu Qianlang's blood-red eyes flashed. 2 rays of blood-red light shot out and pierced through the starlight arrow. The arrow turned into starlight powder and scattered in the air. Lady Xiao Yu, since you've come, then show yourself. You should know that such little tricks are useless against me. Jiyu Qianlang looked at a place where the mist was surging. Following Jiyu Qianlang's words, Xu Xiaoye appeared with a cold and murderous look. Since small tricks don't work, let's play something bigger. Mysterious beast runes appeared on Xu Xiaoye's exquisite face. Her aura surged as specks of starlight descended from the sky. 9 stars divine body. Jiyu Qianlang narrowed his eyes and looked scared. Xu Xiaoye not only had the bloodline of the heavenly spirit Qilin clan. He also possessed an extremely rare 9-star divine body, which allowed him to summon the power of the stars to strengthen his body. Although he was only at the LV7 martial ancestor realm. However, in a real battle, his battle prowess was comparable to an 8th-level martial progenitor. Divine Star Seal. Xu Xiaoye quickly formed hand seals. Mysterious and ancient star seals gathered behind her, forming a star seal divine array. Hoo. The moment the divine array was formed, it spun rapidly like a wheel of wind and fire. Starlight burst out and pressed toward Jiyu Qianlang. Even the void seemed to be collapsing. Roar! Jiyu Qianlang yelled and an ancient seal appeared between his eyebrows. Along with the appearance of the sky-shaking wolf howl, an extremely terrifying pressure seemed to descend from ancient times. Rumble! An earth-shattering sound of collision rang out. The astral divine formation that was whizzing over was struck by a terrifying force. The destructive power of laws collided between the heavens and earth. When the wild ripples of laws dissipated, Jiyu Qianlang and Xu Xiaoye were revealed. At this moment, behind Jiyu Qianlang, there was a huge silver wolf that was more than 300 meters long with silver fur. Ancient Qianlang, Xu Xiaoye stared at the giant silver wolf with a stern look. Just like how Jiyu Qianlang was familiar with her, Xu Xiaoye was also familiar with Jiyu Qianlang's background. Even though Jiyu Qianlang was a ghost cultivator, he had the soul of the ancient Qianlang residing in his body. When the soul of the ancient Qianlang was unleashed, Jiyu Qianlang's battle prowess would greatly improve. Xu Xiaoye dashed forward with an ancient star mirror in her hand. Streaks of star order appeared in the light mirror, forming the scene of the stars in the sky. It was quite profound. Jiyu Tianlang performed a hand seal and merged with the ancient Tianlang. He turned into a silver ray and charged forward. Rumble. The two fought fiercely in the void. The laws of the heavens and earth wreaked havoc, causing the entire Qian palace to shake violently. The two of them were going all out, unleashing killer moves one after another, killing people everywhere they went. Such terrifying battle prowess, ordinary seventh-layer martial progenitors won't last more than a few moves against them. Indeed, one of them has the 9 stars god flesh, allowing him to control the power of the stars, while the other has the soul of the ancient Tianlang, allowing him to merge with the soul of the ancient Tianlang. Their battle prowess is definitely comparable to the 8th-layer martial progenitor realm. The 10,000 Ghost Palace aside, who exactly is the patriarch of the 100 Beast Palace? The crowd continued to discuss among themselves as more people gathered in the distance. Suddenly, someone moved away from the Qian Palace and glanced at the other palaces in astonishment. The martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace had already charged into the 9 Palace mystical heaven formation. However, what caught their attention were the beast spirits with shocking auras surrounding the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. The beast spirits were half illusionary. However, their auras were quite shocking, which were only comparable to the martial progenitor realm. Their numbers were not comparable to the martial progenitors of the 100 Beast Palace. However, with the help of the illusionary beast spirits, they were barely able to resist the martial progenitors. These illusionary beast spirits were formed from the ancient beast god formation. The ancient beast god formation contained the martial progenitor realm beast spirits of the 100 Beast Palace. It was the reason why Xu Xiaoye was confident in dealing with the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The ancient beast god formation could not leave the 100 Beast Palace. However, if an outsider wanted to break into the 100 Beast Palace, they would have to pay with their lives. Bang! Qin Yu inserted the last ancient seal into the ancient beast god formation and the 9 Palace mystical heaven formation. He raised his head to look at the 9 Palace mysterious heaven formation that was engaged in an intense battle, and a frightening cold light flashed in his eyes. The two formations had stabilized. It was time to hunt. Chapter 227. Roar. A dragon's roar resounded in the sky. The azure dragon Shenron circled Qin Yu's figure as he dashed forward with the spear in his hand. Since his identity had been exposed by the 10,000 Ghosts Palace, there was no need for Qin Yu to hide his secret technique any longer. Half-martial progenitor? What kind of secret technique is that? The 100 Beasts Palace has such a powerful secret technique. Their strength has surpassed the strength of a mid-tier faction. The crowd in the distance was astounded. The improvement of a cultivator's strength from the martial god realm to the half-martial progenitor realm was beyond common sense. If the secret technique was made public, the gap between the martial god realm and the martial progenitor realm would be shattered. It's you. Die. Qin Yu charged into the 9 Palace mystical sky formation like a ferocious beast that had just been released from its cage. He was immediately discovered by the 2 martial progenitors of the Snow Marquis mansion. The rules of the heavens and earth around the 2 martial progenitors surged with murderous intent as they charged at Qin Yu. 9 Serenities Purgatory. A pitch-black glow covered the area within 1,000 zhong. Within the black glow, Qin Yu's body was covered in dense, pitch-black dragon scales. Each of the dragon scales was covered in obscure dragon runes that emitted a pitch-black glow. As his cultivation had reached the martial god realm, he was able to fully utilize the power of the 9 Serenities Purgatory. The 2 martial progenitors were unable to detect Qin Yu's presence despite unleashing their rules of the heavens and earth. Qin Yu appeared like a phantom. The 9 Serenities dragon spear was covered in dragon runes, as if the 9 Serenities hellish dragon had appeared once again. The spear penetrated the rift and stabbed at the 2 martial progenitors with a tremendous aura. The 2 martial progenitors were instantly aware of the attack, and immediately defended themselves with the power of rules. The sacred weapon in their hands unleashed a tremendous aura as it slashed at Qin Yu. Ancient space-time deadly formation. Suddenly, a tremendous murderous intent swept the place. The space began to twist slightly, as if the 2 martial progenitors were trapped in a swamp. The space is being affected. Spatial laws. No, he's only a martial god. How could he comprehend the power of law? The two martial progenitors were astounded, as a strong sense of uneasiness rose in their hearts. Die! A thunder-like explosion occurred, and the void directly exploded. The power of the entire space-time ancient killing array was concentrated at the tip of the spear. The weak spots of the heavens and earth surrounding the two martial progenitors were penetrated by the spear. A killing intent that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth rushed into their bodies like a flood, wantonly destroying them. At that instant, the two martial progenitors turned into a bloody mist and disappeared. Two martial progenitors were slain instantly. Qin Yu withdrew the 9 hells purgatory and charged out. It would not take him much effort to kill a first-layer martial progenitor or a second-layer martial progenitor. What's going on? The two martial progenitors disappeared. Could he have been killed? How is this possible? Those are two genuine martial progenitors. After the 9 hells purgatory disappeared, the crowd stared with their eyes open wide when they saw the two martial progenitors disappear. Even if Qin Yu's cultivation had improved to the half-martial progenitor realm, there was no way he could have killed two martial progenitors, right? However, if they were not killed, how did the two martial progenitors disappear? While the crowd was immersed in astonishment, Qin Yu had found another 3 martial progenitors. The 3 martial progenitors were from the 10,000 Ghost Palace. They were already aware of Qin Yu's extraordinary strength when they arrived. Therefore, they did not lower their guard and attacked together with all their might. Despite that, Qin Yu's secret techniques and the space-time ability of the Dragon Soul were not enough. The 3 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were killed too. 3 martial progenitors died at once. Meanwhile, Jiyu Tianlang, who was engaged in a battle of life and death with Xu Xiaoye in the rift, was astonished. His eyes flickered with astonishment as he sensed the deaths of the 3 martial progenitors. 3 martial progenitors had died at once. Even if they were only Earth-level martial progenitors, he was still astonished. Could it be that the 100 Beast Palace was hiding a 7 or 8th layer martial progenitor realm expert? 9-star God Seal. Xu Xiaoye, who was surrounded by starlight, took hold of the opportunity and executed 9-star God Seals. The 9 seals merged into one and transformed into an ancient seal with the size of a fist. The seal emitted a brilliant glow as 3 moons appeared, emitting a formidable aura. Bang! Jiyu Tianlang's heart shuddered as he was about to make his move. However, he was struck hard, causing him to cough out blood. His body emitted a silver glow as his rules of cultivation were shattered. Xu Xiaoye did not give Jiyu Tianlang any chance to react. She summoned a 9-star God Seal with each of her hands and suppressed Jiyu Tianlang. Jiyu Tianlang let out a furious roar as his silver fur grew rapidly. His body expanded rapidly too. In the end, he grew to over 10 zhong tall and continued to fight with Xu Xiaoye. He clearly realized that after being distracted for a brief moment, if he was careless, he might actually die in Xu Xiaoye's hands. However, things did not always turn out the way he wanted them to. As the two fought fiercely, Jiyu Tianlang constantly sensed the deaths of martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. They were so fast that Jiyu Tianlang even wondered if he was hallucinating due to the influence of the formation. After all, those who had achieved the martial progenitor realm were all experienced in battles. Even if they were no match for Jiyu Tianlang, they would not be killed so easily. However, Qin Yu could not be treated with common sense. Even though he had yet to comprehend the rules of cultivation, he was once a martial monarch realm expert with unparalleled strength. Even Jiyu Tianlang and Xu Xiaoye, who were the strongest among them, did not have a 1/10,000th of his understanding of the rules. Therefore, for Qin Yu, as long as he understood the weakness of the rules, ordinary martial progenitors were no match for him. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Meanwhile, inside the 9 Palace Shentian formation, Qin Yu was traveling through the 9 Palace area and killing martial progenitors. With the blue dragon circling his body, he was undefeatable like the god of death. All of the martial ancestors that were targeted by Qin Yu ended up dying. The 3 sects had over 140 martial progenitors. In just a few minutes, more than 20 martial progenitors had been killed. That being said, most of the martial progenitors were below the 3rd layer martial progenitor realm. Even the fourth-layer martial progenitors were being held back by Qin Yu with his beast spirits. It was not because Qin Yu was unable to take care of a level 4 or 5 martial ancestor. However, the three sects had too many low-level martial progenitors, thus the 9-palace Shentian formation was too weak. Therefore, Qin Yu kept killing the low-level martial progenitors. He was trying to gather the power of the 9-palace Shentian formation. With the power of the 9-palace Shentian formation and the ancient beast god formation. If Jiyu Tianlang was alone, Qin Yu was confident that he could kill him on his own. One was an ancient killing formation, while the other was a god-grade formation. Even if they were unable to unleash their full power, they were still powerful enough to kill a martial progenitor. The crowd and the beasts of the 100-beast palace saw the martial progenitors disappearing into the black light that Qin Yu had unleashed. The shocking discussion had long disappeared, replaced by a dead silence. At that instant, even if they did not want to believe it, they could easily tell that the martial progenitors had indeed been killed by Qin Yu. Such heaven-defying combat strength was simply unheard of, never seen before. It was unlikely that anyone in the 100 martial realm would be able to find someone like Qin Yu, who was able to kill enemies with a higher cultivation as if he were drinking water. Chapter 228. Puff. The spear unleashed a powerful aura like a dragon emerging from the sea, penetrating the rift and shattering the sacred weapon. 4 martial progenitors were killed by the spear, leaving a trail of blood. Qin Yu, who was covered in blood with a protective barrier of qi, withdrew the 9 serenities purgatory and charged forward once again. Under Qin Yu's frenzied attacks, the martial progenitors were killed one after another. The more martial progenitors died, the stronger the 9-palace mystical heaven formation became. As a result, Qin Yu's strength grew even more terrifying. An hour later, more than half of the martial progenitors had been slain. Less than 20 to 30% of the first-layer martial progenitors were left. Qin Yu was startled as he sensed the battle at the Qianqian Palace and confirmed that Xu Xiaoye was keeping Jiyu Tianlang busy. His eyes flickered with a cold murderous intent as he sensed a familiar aura. Qin Yu sprang into the sky and appeared in front of 8 martial progenitors in the blink of an eye. They were all martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. The one surrounded by the 7 was none other than Mo Lihuang, who had forced Qin Yu to flee in a sorry state at Luogui City. "It's you." Mo Lihuang was shocked when he saw Qin Yu surrounded by a ferocious aura, before his face was filled with a ferocious murderous intent. There was no way he could stand a chance against the others. However, he was accompanied by 7 martial progenitors. Among the 7 martial progenitors, 1 was at the 6th-layer martial progenitor realm, 2 were at the 5th-layer martial progenitor realm, and 4 were at the 4th-layer martial progenitor realm. Regardless of Qin Yu's strength, there was no way he could turn the situation around. "Kill him," Mo Lihuang said coldly. "Kill him? But Elder Ji Yu has ordered us to capture him alive." The 6th-layer martial progenitor hesitated and was astounded. Even though Mo Lihuang's cultivation was the weakest among them, he was different from them who were from the 100 martial realm. Mo Lihuang was from the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction. The 10,000 Ghost Palace was a faction founded by a martial monarch under the heaven-suppressing Ghost Monarchs faction. Behind Mo Lihuang, there was also a martial emperor powerhouse. Therefore, even though their cultivation was stronger than Mo Lihuang's, their status was lower than his. "Don't worry, we just need to imprison his soul. After all, he will be killed sooner or later." Mo Lihuang's voice was cold as he ordered once more, "Kill him now." Just like Jiyu Tianlang, Mo Lihuang was able to sense the life and death of the martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghosts Hall. Although he had no idea how Qin Yu had done it, he believed that Qin Yu had something to do with the deaths of the martial progenitors. If they continued to ignore Qin Yu, then even if they were able to capture Qin Yu in the end, their vitality would definitely be greatly damaged. This was not what Mo Lihuang wanted to see. For the myriad Ghost Palace to develop to its current state, their lineage had put in a lot of effort. He could not allow himself to be buried in Qin Yu's hands. "Kill." The eyes of the martial progenitor flickered ferociously. A strong ghastly aura surged from his figure, which transformed into a 100 jong wide ghastly black hole that charged in Qin Yu's direction. The aura of the ghastly black hole was so strong that it felt like it was going to devour the rift. A martial art, huh? Qin Yu glanced at the ghastly vortex with great interest. Following this, a pitch-black glow swept across the place. The people of the Myriad Ghost Palace were encapsulated within it. Whoosh! Qin Yu, whose figure was covered in pitch-black dragon scales, swiftly dodged the attack of the sixth-layer martial progenitor. He instantly appeared in front of Mo Lehuang's group of 6 and activated the ancient space-time deadly formation. Crap! Mo Lehuang's hair stood on its end as he sensed the space around him being twisted. An ancient bronze mirror appeared in his hand. Obscure ghastly runes were unleashed on the mirror, which emitted a mysterious glow. Crack! As soon as the ancient bronze mirror appeared, a pitch-black ancient dragon sprang forward with a ferocious murderous intent. The ancient bronze mirror shuddered violently before it exploded into pieces. This ancient treasure of extraordinary origin, under Qin Yu's all-out attack and the might of the double slaughtering array, directly turned into bronze fragments and exploded. Huh! Qin Yu was astounded. His attack was clearly targeting Mo Lehuang. However, in the blink of an eye, they were all attracted by the ancient bronze mirror, and all the attacks landed on the ancient mirror. It was so quick that even Qin Yu did not have time to react. That was close. Mo Lehuang's face turned pale as he could not conceal the fear in his eyes. Although he was heartbroken that the ancient bronze mirror had been destroyed, he was glad that he was still alive. Judging from the power of Qin Yu's attack, he would have died for sure if he had been hit head-on. Set up the formation. Mo Lehuang quickly retreated, and as he did so, another ancient array flag appeared in his hand. The formation flag exploded, causing countless evil and scorching ghastly runes to appear, forming a giant ancient formation. The ancient formation covered an area with a radius of 100 feet around him. Strange laughter could be heard. The 5 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghosts Palace immediately entered the ancient formation and took their respective positions. Boundless ghost qi and true yuan flowed into the ancient formation, causing its power to become even more terrifying. It's the Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Qin Yu recognized that evil and blazing ancient formation. He was a bit surprised. The Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation was one of Ghost Emperor Zhentian's famous deadly formations. In the hands of Ghost Emperor Zhentian, this array had killed many Emperor Masters. It could be said that the Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation's notoriety had shocked countless Emperor Realm experts. Of course, Mo Lehuang, who was only a second-level martial progenitor, could not set up the complete Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation. The Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation could only kill martial progenitors at most. Boom! A terrifying aura shot up into the sky from the Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Then, boundless ghost qi gathered and turned into a ferocious ghost that was 100 feet tall. The ghost held a gigantic flaming ghastly saber in its hand. It was surrounded by dark red evil ghastly runes, like a dark red ferocious armor. This ferocious ghost was the Li Fire Evil Ghost. It was formed by absorbing the Li Fire and Ghost Dao energy. It could devour souls to become stronger. Ghost Emperor Zhentian's Li Fire Evil Ghost was comparable to a peak Emperor Realm expert. Whoosh! The Li Fire Evil Ogre is holding a huge ghost knife. Carrying a vast amount of power, it slashes at Qin Yu from the air. Whoosh! At this moment, the 6th-level martial progenitor noticed that Mo Lehuang was in danger and immediately rushed back. He and the Li Fire Evil Ghost formed a two-pronged attack, trapping Qin Yu. Ghost Eye of Destruction. The Ghost Eye of Destruction trembled in Qin Yu's eyes, and countless mysterious ghastly runes appeared. A deep ray of light condensed in his eyes and shot towards the Li Fire Evil Ogre at lightning speed. Crack! A series of clear cracking sounds could be heard. On the body of the Li Fire Evil Ghost that was slashing at Qin Yu, the ghostly runes on its body immediately shattered, leaving behind an empty area. Mo Lehuang and the others standing in the Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation were astounded, and immediately attacked with all their might. Ancient Space-Time Deadly Formation. Space-Time Reversal. At the same time, the space surrounding Qin Yu started to distort and ripple. The dragon soul uttered a deafening roar as the dragon runes on its scales flickered. A space-time force strong enough to affect the heavens and earth exploded at this moment. It was the martial progenitor who had executed a secret technique of the ghost Tao, whose face was covered in evil ghastly runes. His speed was greatly affected by the impact of the ancient space-time deadly formation and the space-time reversal. His destruction attack was also easily dodged by Qin Yu. Sky-devouring dragon seal, Qin Yu ignored the 6th-level martial progenitor. His figure flickered as he charged at Mo Le Huang and the others. A giant dragon head appeared at the tip of the 9 Netherworld's dragon spear. Mo Le Huang and the others executed their power of laws, but a giant hole was devoured by the spear, allowing Qin Yu to dash into the Li Fire Evil Ghost Formation. Chapter 229. The core of the formation is broken? How is that possible? Seeing Qin Yu, who was rapidly flying toward him, Mo Li Huang's pupils abruptly shrunk. He was in disbelief. The Li Fire Evil Demon Formation was an ancient formation that the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch had never taught to outsiders. The Li Fire Evil Demon Formation was something that his master had comprehended from the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch Boulder. Even if his master was here, he would not be able to see the core of the Li Fire Evil Demon Formation in an instant. However, earlier, Qin Yu had rushed over without the slightest hesitation. It was not a coincidence that he had broken the core of the formation, but he had discovered its location. This was the reason why Mo Le Huang was so astonished. Even though Qin Yu was an advanced sacred formation master, his capabilities were still too shocking. Could it be that Qin Yu had seen the Li Fire Evil Demon Formation before? Ancient space-time deadly formation. Qin Yu's spear shuddered as he gathered his murderous intent and attacked Mo Le Huang at lightning speed. Bang! The rift vibrated vigorously as the 5 martial progenitors who were trying to stop Qin Yu were sent flying. With a flicker, the rules of cultivation surrounding Mo Le Huang were shattered as a bloody hole appeared on his forehead. A one-shot kill. Damn it! Liu Chong, the martial progenitor who had just broken through the seal of time and space, was astounded. Mo Le Huang was a second-layer martial progenitor, but he had been killed by Qin Yu with a single move. It was something that he never thought would happen. Dragon spear dominating the sky. Qin Yu's eyes turned cold as he fired a killing blow. The ancient space-time deadly formation, the 9 palace mystical formation, and the ancient beast god formation merged into one. Under the guidance of the 9 Netherworld's dragon spear, the formation sprang forward with the 6th-layer martial progenitor as the center. Die. The 6th-layer martial progenitor was infuriated as the rules of cultivation around him exploded. The ghastly black hole spun rapidly with a devouring force, which shattered the ripples of the 3 deadly formations and headed in Qin Yu's direction. Beast spirit, appear. Qin Yu did not dodge it. Within the beast god ancient formation, a giant beast soul with golden horns descended from the sky. The horned beast spirit stomped its hooves, filling the sky with golden light. With a deafening explosion, the howling black hole was blocked by the horned beast soul. The golden horned godly bull was one of the strongest martial progenitor realm sacred beasts in the history of the 100 Beast Palace. At his peak, he could easily kill a LV5 or LV6 martial progenitor. Even though it was only a beast spirit, it would not have any problem dealing with a 6th-layer martial progenitor within a short period of time. As such, the 100 Beast Palace was able to fight against over 100 martial progenitors from the 10,000 Ghost Palace and the other sects with only 40 martial progenitors. Without these martial ancestor-level beast spirits, even with the help of the ancient beast god formation and the 9 palace mysterious heaven formation, the 100 Beast Palace would have fallen long ago. Forbidden art. Immortal sacrifice. The moment the golden horned celestial cow attacked, Qin Yu's body emitted a white light. The white light condensed and turned into a dazzling ray of light that flashed through the void. Crap! The 6th-layer martial progenitor was astounded as his hair stood on end. He immediately attacked with all his might, causing the rules of the heavens and earth to surge like a tide. Puff! However, the 6th-layer martial progenitor had underestimated the power of the immortal sacrifice art. The rules of the heavens and earth surrounding him were shattered as a hideous hole appeared on his chest, with blood pouring out from it. However, at the critical moment of life and death, he managed to avoid the fatal spot. heavenly stellar sacred light. However, Qin Yu immediately executed his killing blow, as the star dragon seal appeared on his forehead. A ray of light penetrated the destructive rules of the heavens and earth and struck the sixth-layer martial progenitor's figure. His flesh exploded as the sixth-layer martial progenitor's head was penetrated, allowing his soul to escape from his body. Soul-devouring curse. Qin Yu secretly executed a secret technique to devour the soul of the sixth-layer martial progenitor as if he was waiting for his prey. At this point, a high-level martial progenitor had finally fallen. Elder Qi is dead. Who exactly is he? Seeing Mo Lihuang and the sixth-layer martial progenitor falling one after another, the 5 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were utterly terrified. Even a sixth-layer martial progenitor had been slain with ease. Qin Yu's strength had completely exceeded their expectations. Whoosh! Qin Yu did not hesitate as he charged at the 5 martial progenitors with a flicker. Kill! Even though the 5 martial progenitors wore stern looks on their faces. However, they knew that they would be digging their own graves if they were to split up. Only by teaming up would they have a chance to survive. Heaven-battling azure dragon. Demon eyes of destruction. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. Heavenly stellar sacred light. Since Mo Lihuang and the sixth-layer martial progenitor had been slain, Qin Yu was no longer in a rush to deal with the 5 martial progenitors. He did not use the forbidden immortal sacrifice art. Instead, he used the secret techniques of the dragon tribe to defeat the 5 martial progenitors. Following this, Qin Yu weaved through the 9 palace mystical sky formation like a phantom. More martial progenitors were killed by the 3 sects. From the first-layer martial progenitor realm to the second-layer martial progenitor realm, the third-layer martial progenitor realm, the fourth-layer martial progenitor realm, and the fifth-layer martial progenitor realm. Every martial progenitor that Qin Yu stumbled into was killed instantly. What exactly happened? It was Jiyu Tianlang who was fighting against Xu Xiaoye. When he sensed that less than 30 martial progenitors of the 10,000 Ghost Palace were left, the uneasy feeling in his heart grew stronger. However, it just so happened that Xu Xiaoye's attacks became more and more ruthless, causing him to be unable to escape in the slightest. Lady Xiaoye, are you sure you want to fall out with the 10,000 Ghost Palace for that kid? Jiyu Tianlang's silver fur emitted a glow, which formed a giant silver moon behind him. A giant godly wolf appeared from the silver moon. Jiyu Tianlang's aura skyrocketed, which vaguely reached the peak 8th-layer martial progenitor realm. You've brought so many people here and sealed off the 10,000 Ghost Palace, and now you're asking me if I'm going to fall out with the 10,000 Ghost Palace? Xu Xiaoye's eyes became colder as her figure was encapsulated by the glow of stars. She had no idea why Qin Yu had destroyed the Luogui city. However, she was clear about one thing. Not only did Jiyu Tianlang want to capture Qin Yu, he also wanted to use Qin Yu as an excuse to capture her. Therefore, since Jiyu Tianlang had already fallen out with her, she would not sit still and wait for her death. Don't tell me you're seriously thinking that the kid only destroyed a city is enough for me to show up in person and bring so many martial progenitors with me. You're from the heavenly domain too, thus you should know about the past of the 10,000 Ghost Palace. Therefore, I don't mind telling you some things. That kid has something that the Sacred Island has always wanted to know, the secrets of the first saint and the 7th saint that betrayed him. Now, you should know how serious the trouble that kid is involved in, right? Jiyu Tianlang did not want to talk about it. However, since the martial progenitor realm of the 10,000 Ghost Palace had suffered such a great loss, and Xu Xiaoye was trying her best to hold him back, he had no choice but to tell her the truth. Xu Xiaoye was from the heavenly domain and was closely related to the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch's line. She should know the pros and cons of the matter. The first saint and the 7th saint. As he thought, Xu Xiaoye's expression stiffened hearing this. If what Jiyu Tianlang had said was true, they would be in great trouble. Bang! At that instant, a terrifying tail descended upon them, causing the 9 palace mystical sky formation and the ancient beast god formation to tremble vigorously, as if they were going to collapse at any second. The aura of the tail, Jiyu Tianlang and Xu Xiaoye were startled as they sensed the aura. Martial progenitor realm, peak 9th cycle. Qin Yu's expression froze as he raised his head and glanced into the sky. There, a figure appeared out of nowhere. Chapter 230. The person who had appeared in the sky was simply standing in the rift. However, the aura he was emitting felt like a 10,000 jong tall godly sword. A tremendous aura came crashing down upon Qin Nan. All the living beings in the area felt suffocated. Apart from the ordinary beasts of the 100-beast palace. Even the 9-palace mysterious sky array could clearly feel that kind of pressure. The 9-palace mystic heaven formation, which was originally filled with intense and chaotic battles, became deathly silent. The martial progenitors immediately glanced into the sky. Even though they could only see a blurry mist, they could clearly sense it. A terrifying presence had appeared in the sky. Even those beast spirits who were not very intelligent could not help but stop in their tracks. Such a terrifying aura. Is that peak martial progenitor realm? Or half-martial monarch realm? The 10,000 Ghost Palace has such a terrifying presence. The crowd who had gathered in the distance could not conceal the astonishment in their eyes when they saw the person. Even though they were quite far away, they did not dare to move at all. Even though the person did not do anything, they could sense it. If they were to move recklessly, they would be in great danger. A peak 9th revolution martial progenitor realm expert? Even the person from the 10,000 Ghost Palace is here? Xu Xiaoye's eyes flickered with disbelief. Even though the martial progenitor realm was only divided into 9 layers, it did not mean one would be able to break through to the martial monarch realm. The difference between the martial progenitor realm and the martial monarch realm was like the difference between heaven and earth. Therefore, a 9th layer martial progenitor would need to undergo 9 nirvanas. Only after undergoing 9 nirvanas would one be able to break through to the martial monarch realm. Even though the 9th revolution martial progenitor realm and the 9th revolution martial progenitor realm were the same realm. However, each difference in the nirvanas would result in a huge difference in strength. According to Xu Xiaoye's knowledge, even the 10,000 Ghost Palace only had one peak 9th revolution martial progenitor realm expert. He was the person most likely to achieve the martial monarch realm in the 100 martial realm. In addition to Jiyu Tianlang, even the person had appeared. This caused Xu Xiaoye's heart to sink. She could not help secretly guessing whether Qin Yu was really involved in the matter Jiyu Tianlang had talked about. Third senior brother actually knows. Although the newcomers were indeed top experts from the Myriad Ghost Temple, Jiyu Tianlang's face darkened. In the entire Myriad Ghost Palace, the only person he feared was his third senior brother. His third senior brother was not only the strongest expert in the Myriad Ghost Palace. Even among the martial progenitors of the heaven-suppressing ghost monarch's lineage, he was considered one of the best, and had even caught the attention of the sacred island. When Qin Yu saw the person who had appeared, his eyes narrowed slightly. If it was just an ordinary LV9 martial ancestor, with his trump cards, the ancient beast god formation, and the 9-palace mysterious sky formation, Qin Yu was still confident that he could win. But the one who came was at the peak of the 9th level. The trouble was not on the same level. How do you plan to fight? Inside the divine dragon ancient seal, the dragon soul had a solemn expression. He was well aware of his current situation. The 100-beast palace was currently sealed, and there was no way to teleport out. If Qin Yu were to abandon the formation and flee, he would not be able to outrun a peak 9th cycle martial progenitor. Therefore, using the 2 formations was the right choice. With the might of these 2 formations, Qin Yu's battle prowess had increased by more than just a little. Let's get rid of these small fries first. The thought crossed Qin Yu's mind. He did not chase after the martial progenitors, but quickly performed a hand seal. The 9-palace mysterious sky formation and the ancient beast god formation began to vibrate vigorously. In just a few breaths' time, both the martial progenitors of the Myriad Ghost Palace and the 100-beast palace were knocked out of the 9-palace mysterious sky formation. Facing a peak 9th revolution martial ancestor, Qin Yu would have to utilize all of his battle prowess in order to defeat him. We're finally out. The martial progenitors of the Myriad Ghost Palace and the other sects let out sighs of relief. Even though they had no idea what had happened. But at least, they had finally escaped from the killing formation. What's going on? Did the others? However, the martial progenitors soon collected their thoughts. An uncontrollable chill ran down their spines, causing their bodies to turn icy. The three sects initially had over 140 martial progenitors. However, only over 30 of them had made it out alive. The rest of them were all dead. Not all of them possessed the strongest cultivation, as more than 10 of them were second or third layer martial progenitors. In other words, many of the 6th layer and 5th layer martial progenitors had fallen among the 140 cultivators. They're all dead. How did he do it? Was he pretending to be weak, and his cultivation has actually reached the advanced martial progenitor realm? Even an advanced martial progenitor wouldn't possess such terrifying strength. It seems like a great battle is about to take place. The crowd in the distance was astounded too. Their astonishment was on par with the peak 9th cycle martial progenitor realm expert who had suddenly appeared. Damn it! Jiyu Tianlang wore a dark expression after seeing the remaining martial progenitors of the myriad ghost palace. He had the urge to tear Qin Yu into pieces and burn his bones into ashes. But now, he had no choice but to withhold his murderous intent after glancing at his third senior brother who was standing in the air. Third senior brother. Jiyu Tianlang summoned his courage and flew toward his third senior brother, Bailey Shenghuang, and greeted. You're pretty good. Master spent so much effort to nurture the strength of the 10,000 Ghost Palace to its current state. Yet, you've destroyed nearly half of it. Bailey Shenghuang said calmly. His gaze was fixed on the 9 Palace mystical heaven formation instead of looking at Jiyu Tianlang. A faint layer of black, ghostly light appeared in his eyes. The misty 9 Palace mysterious heaven formation seemed to be transparent in his eyes. Qin Yu's figure clearly appeared in his eyes. Third senior brother, I didn't expect it to turn out like this. I would have asked you to come out of seclusion if I wasn't worried about disturbing you. Jiyu Tianlang knew he had no choice but to admit his mistake after losing so many people. Oh, so you're worried about disturbing me instead of worrying about me knowing what happened between the first saint and the 7th saint. Bailey Shenghuang said calmly. Third senior brother, so you already know. Jiyu Tianlang's heart sank. He didn't care about Mola Huang's death, but now Bailey Shenghuang knew that Qin Yu was related to the first saint and the 7th saint. His original ambition was probably going to fall through. In order to prevent me from taking the credit for finding the ancient deity token, you brought people to catch him behind my back. What an idiot. Do you know what the ancient deity token means to the Ghost Emperor? Bailey Shenghuang finally looked away and stared at Jiyu Tianlang coldly. Luckily, I came here in person today. If this man escaped, the clue of the ancient deity token would be lost and you'd know what an angry Ghost Emperor is like. Jiyu Tianlang's face turned pale and cold sweat kept popping out. Although he didn't know much about the secret of the ancient deity token, he knew Bailey Shenghuang's character and knew that Bailey Shenghuang wouldn't say such fake words on purpose. If they were to truly allow Qin Yu to escape today, then what Bailey Shenghuang said would very likely happen. Chapter 231. The Divine Power of the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon. How did he get it? Bailey Shenghuang glanced at Jiyu Tianlang, whose face was pale and covered in cold sweat. Bailey Shenghuang looked at Qin Yu in the 9 Palace Mystic Sky Formation again. Within the 9 Palace Mysterious Heaven Array, the dusky mist and pitch-black light dispersed. Qin Yu's figure was directly revealed. A trace of astonishment appeared in Bailey Shenghuang's indifferent eyes. Qin Yu knew that the 9 Serenities Purgatory was useless to him, so he withdrew it. Bailey Shenghuang was curious about how Qin Yu had managed to cultivate the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon's divine power. Even if Qin Yu had the inheritance of the first saint, he couldn't have obtained the inheritance of the 9 Serenities Hell Dragon. Only those from the Dragon Tribe could obtain the divine power of the Dragon Tribe. As far as Bailey Shenghuang knew, there was only one martial monarch in the entire heaven region. However, the martial monarch had died 1,000 years ago. Even his divine bones and divine soul had disappeared, leaving no inheritance behind. He had been completely erased from the heaven region. Whoosh! Faint starlight flashed in the sky. A figure passed through the 9 Palace Mystic Sky Formation and appeared in front of Qin Yu. It was Xu Xiaoye, who had been thrown out of the formation. Xu Xiaoye stopped 10 feet away from Qin Yu and looked at Qin Yu with flickering eyes. Even Bailey Xionghuang had appeared. Jiyu Tianlang must be telling the truth. However, Xu Xiaoye couldn't understand why Qin Yu had obtained the inheritance of the two saints under the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor. Then why did he go to Luogui City to cause trouble? Wasn't he trying to expose his identity? He's a rank 9 martial ancestor. Even if we work together, we won't be able to defeat him. You'd better tell the people of the 100-Beast Palace to retreat. Sensing Xu Xiaoye's arrival, Qin Yu didn't turn around. He held his spear and looked at Bailey Xionghuang. Who exactly are you? Xu Xiaoye asked. It doesn't matter who I am. At least, I'm not your enemy. Qin Yu said indifferently. Then I'll ask you directly. Did you obtain the inheritance of the 10,000 Ghost Palace's former palace master? This was what Xu Xiaoye was concerned about. If Qin Yu was really involved in the matter between the First Holy Sun and the Seventh Holy Sun under the Sky-Suppressing Ghost Emperor's command, the Sky-Suppressing Ghost Emperor's First Holy Sun and the Seventh Holy Sun, she, who had teamed up with Qin Yu today, would probably be in a lot of trouble. You actually know about this? Qin Yu was stunned for a moment before he immediately reacted. Is that why they are here? Memories flashed through his mind. The only thing that could reveal that he had obtained the ancient immortal token was the Skeleton Ghost King. In the Battle of Luogui City, the Skeleton Ghost King was disintegrated, and its remains were scattered all over the city. Unfortunately, when dealing with Mo Lehuang previously, Qin Yu directly killed him. He did not extract his soul and refine it. Otherwise, he should be able to obtain a lot of useful information. Xu Xiaoye's heart sank. Qin Yu's words undoubtedly told her the correct answer. Rumble. At this moment, Bailey Xionghuang took a step forward and appeared above the 9 Palace Shentian formation. He stomped his foot in the air, and the vast laws of heaven and earth as vast as the sea exploded and engulfed everything. The 9 Palace Shentian formation shook violently, and the 9 Palace formation floated up and down. Countless formation runes immediately collapsed. However, the 9 Palace Shentian formation did not collapse. The might of the ancient era's killing array was not something to joke about. It's not simple, but Bailey Xionghuang threw out another punch. Ghostly runes covered his right fist, and it turned into a 5-jong giant fist. It smashed down from the sky like a meteor, suppressing and destroying everything. No matter how powerful the ancient formation was, it was futile in the face of absolute power. Double formation, form, Qin Yu shouted in a low voice. He started to form hand seals with his hands. The ancient beast god formation and the 9 Palace Shentian formation immediately turned into a double killing formation, and it spun wildly like a giant millstone. Boom! Another earth-shattering sound was heard, and the terrifying aftershock of the attack turned into a destructive hurricane. Giant mountains in the distance collapsed, and the ground began to crack open. The palaces of the 100-Beast Palace under the double-killing formations collapsed due to the impact. The beasts below Wu Sheng's level began to bleed from their orifices, as their souls were severely injured. Qin Yu, who was closest to the attack, spat out a line of blood after his figure shuddered violently. Xu Xiaoye's face turned slightly pale, and she immediately withdrew from the 9 Palace Shentian formation. As Qin Yu had mentioned, facing Bailey Xionghuang, who was a 9th-layer martial progenitor realm cultivator, it was useless. Even if she were to attack, it would not make any difference. Crack! Bailey Xionghuang's figure sprang forward like a sharp arrow. The double-killing formation immediately had a gap between the 9 Palace Shentian formation and the ancient beast god formation, thus it was unable to stop Bailey Xionghuang. Whoosh! Bailey Xionghuang grabbed with his right hand, causing a ghastly aura to surge forward like a river, which transformed into a giant black seal that suppressed downward. On the giant seal, there was a lifelike and ferocious evil spirit that exuded an extremely evil aura. Ancient space-time killing formation, God-executing killing formation. Qin Yu's eyes were locked onto Bailey Xionghuang's figure. Heaven-battling azure dragon. Heaven-devouring dragon seal. Heavenly lunar sacred light. One after another, divine abilities and secret arts were unleashed like a storm. However, Qin Yu's true killing blow was the ancient space-time killing formation formed by the murderous intent of the God-executing killing formation. Kill. At that instant, Qin Yu's formidable true qi surged into the 9 netherworld dragon spear. The murderous intent of the god-executing killing formation was accumulated at the tip of the dragon spear, as it unleashed the power of the ancient spacetime killing formation and the martial skills. This murderous intent, Bailey Xionghuang, who was sprinting toward Qin Yu with the giant seal in his hand. He could not help but feel a chill down his spine when he sensed the terrifying murderous intent that was locked onto him. Despite having experienced hundreds of battles, he clearly knew that the murderous intent would only appear when one's life was in danger. Bailey Xionghuang found it hard to believe. Qin Yu, who had yet to achieve the martial progenitor realm, possessed such a terrifying murderous intent. This guy. A strange look flashed across Bailey Xionghuang's indifferent eyes as he became more interested in Qin Yu. His attack did not change, but streams of terrifying ghostly energy merged with the giant black seal. The ferocious ghost on the giant seal became more and more terrifying as it pounced toward Qin Yu, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The ferocious ghost and the dragon-patterned spear clashed in the air, as if a giant wave had appeared out of nowhere. A shockwave visible to the naked eye swept out in all directions, destroying everything in its path. The 9 palace mysterious heaven formation and the ancient beast god formation immediately turned into runes and disappeared. However, Qin Yu did not retreat at all. He continued to attack with the spear unity. Immortal sacrificial art. Qin Yu's body flickered with white light as he executed the immortal sacrificial art. The ferocious ghost faced off for a moment, then immediately turned into ghostly qi and dispersed. Boom. However, in the next moment, the giant black seal suppressed Qin Yu. Qin Yu's attack was immediately hindered as his body shuddered violently. The dragon-patterned spear on the 9 netherworld dragon spear cracked, and even the body of the spear began to crack. Cough cough. Qin Yu was knocked a few hundred zhong away as he continued to cough up blood. His aura was extremely weak, indicating that he had suffered a serious injury. Seal. Bailey Xionghuang slammed his hands onto the giant seal. The giant seal emitted a stronger aura, crushing downward like a giant mountain. Despite Qin Yu continuously executing the mystical skills of the dragon tribe, he was unable to resist it. Dragon Soul. Qin Yu groaned in his heart as he ordered the Dragon Soul to execute its spacetime ability. The entire killing formation in the god-executing formation began to tremble. Bang! However, at that instant, a blue ray appeared out of nowhere, causing the air to tremble slightly. The giant seal was immediately penetrated as a figure appeared before Qin Yu. It was none other than the hunchbacked, one-armed old man. Chapter 232. The one-armed old man was dressed in a grey robe. His back was hunched and he looked lethargic. He did not look impressive at all. However, it was this one-armed old man who had pointed his finger just now. The giant seal that Qin Yu could not resist even with his full strength had been pierced through and dissipated. This person. Bailey Xionghuang looked at the one-armed old man with a serious expression. The one-armed old man looked lifeless and unremarkable. It made him feel extremely dangerous, and even, his heart palpitated. Ever since he had reached the peak of the 9th rank of the martial ancestor realm, Bailey Xionghuang had met his match in the martial ancestor realm. However, no one had ever made him feel so threatened. Could it be a true martial emperor realm expert? That was not right. Bailey Xionghuang had seen many martial emperors. He could instantly sense the fluctuations of pressure that were above the different levels. What a terrifying feeling. Xu Xiaoye stared at the white-haired old man, her bright eyes flickering. This aura. Not only Bailey Xionghuang and Xu Xiaoye, but Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were also sizing up the one-armed old man. The expressions of the two of them were a little surprised. They had never seen this one-armed old man before. However, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, as if he was an acquaintance that they had not met for a long time. After neutralizing Bailey Xionghuang's attack, the one-armed old man turned around. His turbid and dim gaze was sizing up Qin Yu from head to toe. It also seemed like he was confirming something. After a while, the one-armed old man flicked his finger. Numerous lightning runes descended in an orderly manner. They turned into a profound ancient formation array and trapped Qin Yu within it. This is A strong sense of shock flashed across the dragon soul's huge dragon eyes. Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock Technique? Qin Yu also looked at that one-armed old man with an expression of disbelief. This secret technique used the true power of heavenly thunder to lock one's mind, seal one's soul, and suppress one's soul. It was said that once one was suppressed, there was no chance of survival. However, this was only a legend in the outside world. In fact, the Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock technique had a fatal flaw. Once they knew about it, even those with no cultivation would be able to break it easily. However, there were less than 5 people in the entire Qingyun realm who knew the weakness of the Heavenly Thunder Soul Lock technique. This was because the Heavenly Thunder Soul Locking technique was created by Qin Yu's master. Therefore, the only people who knew the weakness of this secret technique were those from Qin Yu's sect. This one-armed old man, could it be? May I know who you are? Why are you interfering in this matter? Bailey Xionghuang spoke in a cold voice. From the looks of it, this one-armed old man seemed to have a close relationship with Qin Yu. If that was the case, it wouldn't be a good thing for him. Because, he wasn't confident that he could deal with the one-armed old man. With your cultivation, you should be able to tell that you are no match for me. Back off. The one-armed old man looked at Bailey Xionghuang. His eyes were dim, without the slightest fluctuation. It was as if, in his eyes, Bailey Xionghuang was merely an ordinary cultivator. Do you know what kind of power my 10,000 Ghost Palace is? Not to mention the 100 Martial Realm, even in the entire 7 Great Martial Realms, those who dared to provoke my 10,000 Ghost Palace have never had a good ending. Bailey Xionghuang's eyes darkened as he threatened in a cold voice. The one-armed old man didn't waste any more words and struck out with his palm. There wasn't any shocking power, just a simple palm image fiercely striking at Bailey Xionghuang. However, it made Bailey Xionghuang's hair stand on end, and the sense of crisis multiplied. The one-armed old man's control of the laws of heaven and earth had reached a level where it didn't overflow. Bailey Xionghuang admitted that he was far inferior to this kind of method. Could it be that he has already touched the half-step Emperor realm? Bailey Xionghuang's heart sank. He shouted loudly, and a majestic and terrifying law of heaven and earth erupted from his body. An ancient seal surrounded by terrifying ghost law condensed, but it instantly disappeared into the void. In the next instant, deep ripples appeared in the void, and turned into 1,000 zhong-wide vortex of ghost qi. Numerous ferocious, pitch-black evil spirits with extremely terrifying auras continuously emerged from the ghost qi vortex like fountains at the bottom of the water. In an instant, tens of thousands of black ghosts appeared in the sky, scattered all over the weeping ghost vortex. If one looked at it from afar, they would be able to see it. The tens of thousands of pitch-black evil spirits were arranged into a mysterious and unfathomable ghostly picture. It emitted a supreme pressure that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. 10,000 ghost picture? Jiyu Tianlang, who was watching the battle from afar, saw Bailey Xionghuang use the strongest technique of the 10,000 Ghost Palace, and he couldn't hide the shock in his eyes. That one-armed old man who looked lifeless actually had such terrifying strength. Bang! The 10,000 ghost picture and the palm image instantly met. Huge cracks spread out in the void like a spiderweb, and half of the sky was covered. However, in just an instant, the 10,000 ghost picture collapsed, and all the ferocious ghosts exploded. Bailey Xionghuang's body shook violently, and he coughed up blood as he quickly retreated. The one-armed old man took a step forward, covering a distance of a few hundred zhong, and threw out another palm attack. As the rift shattered, Bailey Xionghuang was severely injured once again. His skin and flesh were torn apart, and blood flowed out continuously. Even his bones were vaguely visible. Damn it! Bailey Xionghuang's expression changed greatly when he saw the one-armed old man throwing out another palm attack. He cursed furiously, and immediately turned into a ghostly glow, disappearing into the rift. After the previous 2 battles, he clearly knew that he was no match for the one-armed old man. If he didn't run away now, he would most likely lose his life here. Quick, run! Jiyu Tianlang and the others were startled when they saw Bailey Xionghuang fleeing with serious injuries. They immediately fled without hesitation. Bailey Xionghuang, who is a 9th-layer martial progenitor, was defeated. Who is that old man? A bulky man exclaimed. He was the leader of a middle-ranked faction, and his cultivation had reached the advanced martial progenitor realm. He knew how terrifying Bailey Xionghuang's strength was. However, despite his outstanding strength, Bailey Xionghuang had been defeated in just 2 attacks. How could he not be astounded? Most shockingly, he was unable to determine the strength of the one-armed old man. Even though he had just witnessed the one-armed old man's attack, he was still completely unaware of the one-armed old man's strength. How long are you planning to stay here? The one-armed old man did not react to the people of the 10,000 Ghost Palace fleeing. He simply turned his head and glanced into the rift. The one-armed old man's originally turbid gaze was now as sharp as lightning. A figure appeared out of thin air where the one-armed old man was looking. It was a man wearing a black robe, with a third eye on his forehead. The three-eyed man glanced at the one-armed old man, before glancing at Qin Yu, before fleeing without wasting any time. Three-eyed. Could it be Mo Changsheng? Xu Xiaoya's eyes flickered with astonishment as she watched the man disappear into the distance. Mo Changsheng was the leader of the Heavenly Demon sect. No one knew where he came from, but his cultivation was considered top-notch even among the 7 great martial realms. Before establishing the Heavenly Demon sect, Mo Changsheng had even conquered the demonic sects of the 3 martial realms. However, after establishing the Heavenly Demon sect, Mo Changsheng had kept a low profile and rarely showed himself. Who would have thought that Mo Changsheng would be here for the upcoming battle? Xu Xiaoya was left speechless. Qin Yu was really good at picking his opponents. Those he had picked were all troublesome people. Chapter 233. After defeating Bailey Xionghuang and scaring Mo Changsheng away, the one-armed old man turned around to look at Qin Yu. At this moment, the Heavenly Lightning Soul locking technique around Qin Yu still had not disappeared. The one-armed old man looked at Qin Yu and pointed at him. The Heavenly Lightning Soul lock technique immediately struck down with destructive lightning. Judging from the power of the attack, even a martial progenitor would die without a doubt if he was struck by it. However, Qin Yu simply took 9 steps in the air and walked out of the ancient lightning formation. All the lightning bolts that were crashing down disappeared in an instant. 9 Heavens Thunder Transformation Step. The only way to break the Heavenly Lightning Soul Lock technique. Although it was a simple 9 steps in the air, it contained a supreme Tao skill. If an ordinary person could comprehend it, they would benefit from it for life. Junior brother. A layer of green light appeared on the one-armed old man's body, and a mysterious and profound aura appeared. At this moment, the one-armed old man, who was originally lethargic, suddenly emitted a supreme domineering aura. Eldest. Senior brother. Qin Yu's eyes widened in shock. He was all too familiar with the supreme domineering aura emitted by the layer of green light. In Qin Yu's previous life, there were only 4 disciples in his sect. Apart from him and Xing Luo, there was a senior brother and a senior sister. When Qin Yu and Xing Luo had just become disciples of his master, their senior brother had taken good care of them. It was precisely because of this that Qin Yu felt so shocked. At the time when Qin Yu became his master's disciple, his eldest martial brother was already a martial emperor. Later on, due to his obsession, he was stuck at the peak of the martial emperor realm and could not become a martial emperor. However, since his senior brother was still alive after 1,000 years, his cultivation must have reached the martial emperor realm. Otherwise, he would not have been able to survive until now. However, not only did his senior brother's appearance change, but his cultivation had also dropped to the martial ancestor realm. Even though his battle strength was enough to easily crush a peak 9th rank martial ancestor realm, he was still a martial ancestor. What had happened in the past few years? His eldest senior brother had actually become like this. It really is you. Lin Changqing couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes. When he saw Qin Yu display the 9 esoteric battle dragons in Ghost Luo City, he didn't believe it was the same as Qin Yu who had reached the peak of the Emperor realm. It was only when he witnessed Qin Yu's attacks and even the immortal sacrificial art that he was certain of Qin Yu's identity. Lin Changqing was about to speak when he caught sight of Xu Xiaoya. So, he waved his sleeves, and disappeared in a flash of green light. No wonder you're so fearless. It turns out that you have such an expert backing you. But After Lin Changqing left with Qin Yu, Xu Xiaoye stared blankly for a long time before finally coming to her senses and fleeing into the 100 Beasts Palace. Although the 100 Beast Palace had managed to survive today's battle, the 100 Beast Palace had managed to survive. However, if Qin Yu was really involved in the matter of the two holy sons under the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's command, the 10,000 Ghost Palace, no, the Sky Suppression Ghost Emperor's bloodline, would never let it go. Therefore, Xu Xiaoye immediately left the 100 Martial Realm after arranging the matters of the 100 Beasts Palace. If this matter was not handled properly, she might be trapped in the swamp and unable to escape. At this time, Qin Yu and Lin Changqing, who had disappeared from the 100 Beasts Palace, appeared in a palace more than 10 regions away. Eldest senior brother, how did you become like this? Little junior brother, did you possess someone? In the ancient palace, Lin Changqing and Qin Yu, who had just appeared, spoke at the same time. My situation is a bit complicated. But little junior brother, what happened to you in the immortal god graveyard? How did you become like this now? Lin Changqing asked. When he first learned that Qin Yu had died, Lin Changqing was extremely shocked. After his master left, the heavenly domain entered its heyday, and there were many Emperor Realm experts. However, Qin Yu's title as the Dragon God Sovereign was definitely the most dazzling Emperor Realm expert. It could even be said that in that era, Qin Yu was invincible in one-on-one battles. This title was obtained by Qin Yu by stepping on the bones of many Emperor Realm experts. No one dared to question it. Therefore, when Lin Changqing learned that Qin Yu had died in the immortal god graveyard, he thought it was just a rumor. It was not until later, when Qin Yu's natal light was extinguished, that he was sure that Qin Yu had really died. However, Lin Changqing could not understand. With Qin Yu's ability, even if he encountered a great crisis, he should be able to escape. Why would he die so thoroughly in the immortal god graveyard? Eldest senior brother, you didn't go to Xingluo? Qin Yu was a little surprised. Even if the news of him being besieged by Xingluo and the 12 ancient emperors had not spread in the heavenly domain, Lin Changqing should have gone to look for Xingluo. I did go to look for Xingluo, but he disappeared after your accident. He hasn't shown himself since. If it weren't for the fact that his natal flame hasn't been extinguished yet, I would have suspected that he had died. Lin Changqing said. Xingluo disappeared. He hasn't appeared yet. Qin Yu was startled. This was something that he had never imagined before. That's right. Xingluo has not appeared since you went to the immortal god graveyard. Lin Changqing said. This was the reason why he wanted to find out what had happened in the immortal god graveyard. After all, Qin Yu's battle strength was unparalleled, and Xingluo's battle strength was top-notch among the Emperor Realm experts. He really could not think of anything major that could have happened to two top-notch Emperor Realm experts. Could it be that Fairy Shualan has made a move? Just as Qin Yu was getting more and more confused, the Dragon Soul spoke. After Xingluo had joined forces with the 12 ancient emperors to besiege Qin Yu, he had gone to the endless void to pursue the Dragon Soul. Fortunately, he had been stopped by Fairy Shualan. Therefore, at least Xingluo had not died in the immortal god graveyard. Qin Yu thought for a while, then briefly told Lin Changqing about how he had been besieged by Xingluo. Since Lin Changqing had already recognized his identity, there was no need to hide it. Xingluo joined forces with the 12 ancient emperors to set up a death trap against you. Lin Changqing was stunned, his mouth agape. He knew very well how good the relationship between Qin Yu and Xingluo was. Both of them were medicine slaves and had supported each other through life and death. They could be said to be as close as brothers. Back then, Qin Yu had succeeded in becoming his master's disciple, but Xingluo had not been so lucky. Qin Yu and Xingluo knelt for an entire 9 months without eating or drinking. Only then did they manage to move his master and allow the two of them to become his disciples. Would Xingluo betray Qin Yu and frame him? Lin Changqing could not believe it. First senior brother, how did you get these injuries? Qin Yu asked. His first senior brother's cultivation had fallen to the martial progenitor realm, but that was not the main reason. More importantly, the aura of death on his first senior brother's body was crazily devouring his life force. Even though Qin Yu had not carefully inspected his first senior brother's condition, he could vaguely feel that his first senior brother's life force had already been depleted. It was not an exaggeration to say that his first senior brother was a corpse. Chapter 234. I went to the immortal seeking ancient road. Hearing Qin Yu's question, Lin Changqing pondered for a moment and slowly spoke. Immortal seeking ancient road? Did something really happen to Master? Qin Yu's heart sank. Other than his master, Qin Yu couldn't think of anything else. What other reason could make his senior brother enter the immortal seeking ancient road? One had to know that the immortal seeking ancient road was a place that even Qin Yu at his peak did not dare to set foot in. Junior brother, how do you know about this? Have you returned to the sect? Lin Changqing was startled. He didn't expect Qin Yu to already know that something had happened to his master. No, but I saw someone obtain the inheritance of burying Heaven's sword immortal. Qin Yu told Lin Changqing about the sword mark. Lin Changqing sighed. Although he wasn't sure if his master had completely fallen. However, burying Heaven's sword immortal was an existence that dominated the Heaven domain together with his master. Since burying Heaven's sword immortal's inheritance had been obtained by someone else, his fate could be imagined. His master's situation was probably not optimistic. Next, Lin Changqing told Qin Yu about his experiences over the years. 300 years after Qin Yu's death, Lin Changqing completely advanced to the Emperor realm. Not only that, he relied on a special inheritance and a strong foundation to become a top Emperor realm master. However, after 200 years, his master's natal light suddenly dimmed. Lin Changqing, who had been investigating the cause of Qin Yu's death, immediately returned to the sect. After 100 years, when his master's life flame was only a small flame, the life flame in his master's life flame was only a small flame. Lin Changqing resolutely stepped into the immortal seeking ancient road. But in the immortal seeking ancient road, he encountered a spatial storm. Lin Changqing was lucky to not die. But his physical body was completely destroyed, and he survived until his soul took over another body. But his soul source was severely injured, and his vitality gradually dissipated. Until now, he had already turned into a state of walking corpses. Lin Changqing gave up the chance to reincarnate and used a secret technique to burn his soul source to survive. His purpose was to find Xing Luo. In his entire life, his master had only taken in a total of 4 disciples. He himself was heavily injured, and Qin Yu had fallen in the graveyard of the immortal god. Therefore, Lin Changqing had no choice but to seek out Star Luo. He wanted Star Luo to go to the immortal seeking ancient road. Lin Changqing had appeared in the 100 martial realm. It was because he had been searching for the Star Luo clan in countless martial worlds and shattered continents. Eldest senior brother, what exactly is on the immortal seeking ancient road? After hearing this, Qin Yu was slightly relieved. As long as the life lamp was not extinguished, with his master's ability, he should not die so easily. However, even when his master teamed up with the heaven-burying sword immortal to barge into the immortal seeking ancient road, something still happened. Qin Yu was even more curious and intimidated by the immortal seeking ancient road. As soon as I entered the immortal seeking ancient road, I encountered that ancient beast. After a huge battle, I was swept into the spatial storm. Therefore, as for what exactly is in the immortal seeking ancient road, even I have no idea. Lin Changqing smiled bitterly. He had long heard about the dangers of the immortal seeking ancient road. Before entering the immortal seeking ancient road, he had prepared for 100 years. However, the dangers of the immortal seeking ancient road far exceeded his expectations. In fact, Lin Changqing even suspected that the area he had entered was the real immortal seeking ancient road. Qin Yu's eyes flashed slightly. A teacher for a day, a father for life. Since something had happened to his master in the immortal seeking ancient road, Qin Yu naturally could not ignore it. Originally, he wanted to get more information about the immortal seeking ancient road from his eldest senior brother. After returning to the heaven domain to find the Star Luo clan, he would go to the immortal seeking ancient road. But now, it seemed that even if he recovered his cultivation and succeeded in his revenge, He would have to be careful about going to the immortal-seeking ancient road. Lin Changqing saw Qin Yu's expression and naturally knew what Qin Yu was thinking. This made him feel quite relieved. Although he did not know why the Star Luo clan would betray Qin Yu. At the very least, Qin Yu was still the little junior brother in his memory. Nothing had changed. Eldest senior brother, where's second senior sister? After pondering for a while, Qin Yu came back to his senses and asked. His second senior sister was called Ning Qianmo, and she was also a brilliant genius. In fact, before Qin Yu obtained the immemorial battle dragon art, his second senior sister had been firmly suppressed by his second senior sister. If his second senior sister knew that something had happened to his master, she would not stand by and do nothing. His senior brother, senior sister, and junior brother were all orphans. Therefore, to them, his master was not as simple as an ordinary master-disciple relationship. Second junior sister is still in closed-door cultivation. I don't know when she will wake up. Lin Changqing naturally went to look for his second junior sister, but Ning Qianmo was not human. Rather than closed-door cultivation, it was more accurate to say that she was in a deep sleep. Once she entered a deep sleep, she would not be disturbed by the outside world. Little junior brother, I remember that the immemorial battle dragon art that you use to cultivate can continuously increase your cultivation as long as you devour dragon blood, right? Lin Changqing asked after he finished speaking. That's right. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Apart from the dragon soul and Xingluo, he had obtained the immemorial battle dragon art. His master, eldest senior brother, and second senior sister also knew. In fact, it was thanks to the help of his master and the other two that he was able to obtain such a cultivation technique. I know a place where there is a dragon. Lin Changqing said. Dragon? What's its grade? Qin Yu and the dragon soul's eyes lit up. It's the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon. I have sensed its dragon blood aura before. It should be a heaven-grade dragon. Lin Changqing said. Heaven-grade dragon. The dragon soul's huge dragon eyes shone brightly. He had just offended the myriad ghost palace and was worried that the martial emperors of the sky suppression ghost emperor would attack. Now, he actually received news of a heaven-grade dragon. This news came at the right time. Qin Yu's eyes also flashed with joy. The dragon race was divided into spiritual, heavenly, sacred, divine, and immortal grades. Although the heaven-grade dragon race was not very powerful. If Qin Yu could obtain it and refine it, his strength would increase by more than a few levels. The golden flame heaven incinerating dragon is in the ancient emperor martial world, one of the 7 major martial worlds. However, it will be troublesome to obtain the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon. Lin Changqing continued. What kind of trouble? Qin Yu was a little surprised. Although his eldest senior brother's cultivation had fallen to the martial ancestor realm. But in the 7 major martial worlds, he should be invincible. Even if the cultivation of the martial ancestor realm was almost the same, there was still a huge gap between them. But there was also a huge gap in their combat strength. Just like his eldest senior brother and Bailey Xionghuang. The ancient emperor martial world is the only one that is completely unified among the 7 major martial worlds. The force that rules the entire ancient emperor martial world is called the Ancient Emperor Palace. You may not know this force, but you should have heard of the 3 ancient emperors. Lin Changqing said. Are the 3 ancient emperors related to the ancient emperor martial world? Qin Yu was shocked. The 3 ancient emperors that his eldest senior brother mentioned were not ordinary martial emperors. Although the primordial age was a long time ago, the 3 ancient emperors were famous for their fighting prowess for many eras. Even now, the 3 ancient martial emperors were still very famous. Chapter 235. Although I don't have accurate information, the 3 ancient emperors are indeed related to the ancient imperial palace. Lin Changqing looked at Qin Yu and nodded slightly. Qin Yu could tell the true intention behind his eldest martial brother's words. He didn't want him to go to the ancient imperial martial world and snatch the golden flame heavenly dragon by force. The 3 great ancient emperors were all famous experts from the ancient era. Since the ancient imperial palace was related to them, they couldn't be treated as an ordinary force. Of course, With Qin Yu's current strength, he couldn't even deal with an ordinary top force. Not to mention the ancient imperial palace that unified all the forces in the martial world. However, I have met the ancient emperor of the ancient imperial palace a few times and we have some friendship. I can recommend you to join the ancient imperial palace. After saying that, Lin Changqing spoke again. That was why he knew that the golden flame heavenly dragon was in the ancient imperial palace's ancient imperial secret realm. Eldest senior brother, I will think of a way to deal with the golden flame heavenly dragon. As for you, you can't continue to burn your soul origin. Qin Yu looked at Lin Changqing, who looked lifeless and couldn't be suppressed, with a grave expression. Qin Yu had sensed Lin Changqing's condition carefully just now. Burning his soul origin with a secret technique had caused the vitality of this body to be exhausted. If this continued, his physical body would be able to possess another body. However, the soul would be completely destroyed and wouldn't even have a chance to be reincarnated. If Qin Yu was at his peak, he could resolve Lin Changqing's condition with his own cultivation. But now, since I have found you, I will naturally leave the matter of master to you. Lin Changqing smiled. He knew his own condition better than anyone else. Even if he didn't burn his soul origin with a secret technique, he wouldn't be able to turn the situation around. Oh right, eldest senior brother, have you seen Fairy Shualan? After chatting for a while and learning about the ancient imperial palace's situation, Qin Yu thought of Fairy Shualan and asked. Calculating the time, it was about the time when Fairy Shualan left the heavenly dragon continent. It was similar to when Lin Changqing entered the Emperor realm and entered the immortal-seeking ancient road. Fairy Shualan? Fairy Shualan hasn't appeared in the heaven realm since your accident. Lin Changqing pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Lin Changqing naturally knew Qin Yu's only confidant, Fairy Shualan. After learning of Qin Yu's death, he even went to look for Fairy Shualan. Qin Yu fell into deep thought. Could it be that Fairy Shualan had already left the Qingyun realm? The place where he had rescued Fairy Shualan was an ancient battlefield outside the realm. Although he didn't know anything about Fairy Shualan's background, he could vaguely sense it. Fairy Shualan shouldn't be from the heaven region. This was because Fairy Shualan's cultivation method was completely different from all the orthodoxies in the Qingyun realm. That was a cultivation civilization of a different level in the truest sense. When Qin Yu was taken away by his eldest senior brother, the battle between the Myriad Ghost Palace, the Snow Marquis residence, and the Sky Crane Valley had spread throughout the 100 Martial realm. The result of the battle between the four sects shocked all the forces in the 100 Martial realm. The 100 Beast Palace was a mid-tier force. They were actually able to survive the siege of a top force and two mid-tier forces. This was already shocking enough. When the Myriad Ghost Palace and the other two sects joined forces, there were more than 140 martial ancestors. When the news that only 30 or so people survived spread, all the martial artists in the 100 Martial realm who heard the news doubted their ears. 140 martial ancestor experts. With such a foundation, even an ordinary top force could be destroyed. Especially when a peak 9th cycle martial progenitor realm expert was involved. The 100 Beast Palace had devoured more than 100 martial progenitors at once, thus it was hard to believe. However, as the details of the battle spread, the Snow Marquis residence and the Sky Crane Valley disbanded. No matter how unbelievable it was, they could only believe it. Of course, Qin Yu, who had killed almost all the martial ancestors in this battle, was also famous in the 100 Martial realm. Countless forces were investigating Qin Yu's background. Even the other martial realms had heard of Qin Yu's name. At this moment, in an ancient palace in the Myriad Ghost Palace. Damn it, where did that old man come from? Bailey Xionghuang, whose face was pale and his aura was weak, suddenly slapped his chest and spat out a faint blue gas. Bailey Xionghuang's slightly recovered face was extremely ferocious, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. If Lin Changqing hadn't suddenly appeared at the last moment, no matter what, Qin Yu wouldn't have been able to escape from his hands. Now, not only had his foundation been damaged, even Qin Yu had been rescued. It wasn't easy for him to obtain information about the ancient immortal badge, but he missed it just like that. Bailey Xionghuang naturally hated Lin Changqing to the bone. Squeak. Meanwhile, the door of the palace was opened and a figure came in. It was Jiyu Tianlang. How is it? Did you find out who that person is? Bailey Xionghuang glanced at Jiyu Tianlang coldly. His eyes were filled with an eerie murderous intent, as if he was ready to devour someone at any time, which was quite terrifying. Not yet. Jiyu Tianlang shook his head. Lin Changqing, who had mysteriously disappeared with Qin Yu. He had mobilized the forces of the myriad ghost palace. They couldn't find any trace of him, as if he had really appeared out of nowhere. Bailey Xionghuang's face darkened after hearing this. This time, they had gone to the 100-beast palace with such a huge force. To their surprise, they had failed miserably and returned in a sorry state, completely humiliating themselves. More importantly, up until now, they still didn't know the background of Lin Changqing, who dared to go against them. Third senior brother, should we tell the sacred island about this? Jiyu Tianlang glanced at Bailey Xionghuang's expression and asked carefully. Although only the two of them knew that Qin Yu had received the inheritance of the first saint and the seventh saint. But paper couldn't wrap the fire. Sooner or later, the sacred island would know about this. If the sacred island got the news in person, they would be in much more trouble than they were now. Bailey Xionghuang's face darkened after hearing this. If it weren't for Lin Changqing, even if Qin Yu ran away, he could still catch him. But Lin Changqing's existence was very troublesome. As long as Lin Changqing was there, even if they found Qin Yu's whereabouts, it was basically impossible to catch Qin Yu. The Battle of the 100-Beast Palace made Bailey Xionghuang realize the gap between him and Lin Changqing. Tell this news to Master first. After thinking for a while, Bailey Xionghuang said slowly. There were countless experts in the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor's branch. Although they were all led by the sky-suppressing Ghost Emperor, they naturally formed countless branch groups. Jiyu Tianlang thought for a while and understood what Bailey Xionghuang meant. The matter of the ancient immortal badge was very important. If the news was sent to the sacred island, maybe even the Ghost Emperor would be alarmed, and countless top experts would be drawn out. But if they only told their master, the credit would go to their branch when they found the ancient immortal badge. No matter how strong the one-armed Lin Changqing was, it was impossible for him to fight against a real martial emperor. Chapter 236. What about the 100-Beast Palace? Jiyu Tianlang asked tentatively. Naturally, his target wasn't the 100-Beast Palace, which had already been emptied of thousands of demon beasts. His target was Xu Xiaoye, who had the 9-star divine body. His primordial heavenly wolf soul and Xu Xiaoye's 9-star divine body were a perfect match for each other. If the two were combined, it would be much easier to cultivate. Unfortunately, Xu Xiaoye had no feelings for him. It was the same even though they were in the same martial world. Xu Xiaoye has returned to the sky region. Let's forget about the 100-Beast Palace. Bailey Xionghuang glanced at Jiyu Tianlang. The 100-year agreement between the martial emperors was not over yet. Jiyu Tianlang dared to attack Xu Xiaoye for personal gain. Fortunately, Xu Xiaoye was involved in Qin Yu's matter this time. Otherwise, Jiyu Tianlang would be in big trouble when Xu Xiaoye returned to the sky region. It was also because Xu Xiaoye had returned to the sky region. Bailey Xionghuang had no intention of hiding Qin Yu's matter. Jiyu Tianlang was unwilling to give up, but he had to give up. After all, even if he destroyed the 100-Beast Palace now, he would not be able to capture Xu Xiaoye. 7 days later, in the ancient imperial martial world. After changing his appearance, Qin Yu arrived before a vast and glorious ancient city filled with spiritual energy that was like mist. That ancient city was the ancient imperial city under the jurisdiction of the ancient imperial palace. Whoosh! Not long after, the void rippled, and a figure appeared. It was Lin Changqing. Qin Yu had arranged for his parents and the Qins to stay behind Long Hao's Sumeru realm. Lin Changqing had brought him to the ancient imperial city. 3 days ago, the ancient imperial palace recruited disciples, which was held once every 10 years. Today, the ancient imperial palace would hold a second round of selection for countless geniuses. The ancient imperial palace was a sacred place for the forces in the ancient imperial martial world. All the geniuses were proud to be able to enter the ancient imperial palace. However, that was in the past. According to his eldest senior brother, the ancient imperial martial world was in a turbulent period. This was because the ancient emperor was old and his life was coming to an end. There were many top experts in the ancient imperial palace. However, to be able to suppress all the king palaces in the ancient imperial martial world and become the new ancient emperor, however, he never appeared. This caused the ancient imperial palace to constantly have internal strife. Because of this, there were many powerful Wangs in the ancient imperial martial world. All of them had clearly become restless and were even secretly trying to rope in their opponents. The law of the jungle was the same everywhere. In the past, when the ancient imperial martial world was strong enough, those Wangfu forces could only submit. But now, the ancient emperor was old, and the ancient emperor hall was filled with infighting. There were even signs of separation. Those powerful king mansions naturally wouldn't be willing to be suppressed by the ancient imperial hall. Therefore, on the surface, the ancient imperial hall was still the leader of the ancient imperial martial world. But in reality, the situation was already unstable, and it could turn into a complete mess at any time. This was the reason why Lin Changqing had asked Qin Yu to come to the ancient imperial martial world. The ancient imperial martial world had the golden flame heaven incinerating dragon, a heaven-ranked dragon. Another goal was to have Qin Yu subdue the ancient imperial hall. Since Qin Yu had obtained the ancient immortal token, the treasure of the heaven-suppressing ghost emperor, the myriad ghost palace definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. As for the heavenly demon cult, Mo Changsheng obviously wouldn't let the ancient demon seal go either. Therefore, if Qin Yu could become the emperor of the ancient imperial hall, it would be the best cover for his identity. More importantly, if he could control the power of the ancient imperial martial world. As long as the martial emperors didn't come, no force in the 7 major martial worlds could deal with Qin Yu. To Qin Yu, who is in the process of recovering his power, this is an exceptionally good opportunity. Junior brother, I'll take my leave first. If there's anything, let me know. After handing the token for the semifinals to Qin Yu, Lin Changqing didn't stay any longer. He turned around and left. In the Battle of the 100 Beast Palace, he had only made 2 simple moves. But the burden on his body wasn't small. He had to go into seclusion to recuperate. Take care. After watching Lin Changqing leave, Qin Yu's figure flashed and flew toward the ancient imperial city. The ancient imperial hall can unify the entire ancient imperial martial world without a strong backer in the 3 great imperial regions and heavenly regions. It's obvious that they are strong. If I can subdue them and nurture them, they will definitely be a great help in the future. The dragon soul in the ancient dragon seal agreed with Lin Changqing's suggestion to subdue the ancient imperial hall. Although the ancient imperial hall didn't have a martial emperor, they still had great potential if they were nurtured well. With Qin Yu's alchemy skills, he could definitely nurture a super force. A lone rogue cultivator and someone with a powerful background were 2 completely different existences. Take Qin Yu for example. In his previous life, he was unparalleled in combat strength and was invincible in one-on-one battles. But when he was in a desperate situation and was besieged, he was too weak. Back in the Battle of the Immortal God Graveyard, Qin Yu fell under the joint attack of the Star Luo and the 12 Ancient Emperors. But the Star Luo and the 12 Ancient Emperors weren't the only ones who participated in that battle. Although the Star Luo didn't establish a force, ancient emperors like the heaven-suppressing Ghost Emperor had gathered many Emperor Realm Masters under their command. No matter how strong Qin Yu was, once he was trapped, he wouldn't be able to fight against dozens of people. The forces of the 7 great martial realms are too weak. Instead of nurturing such a force, it's better to imitate the Dragon Emperor and establish the Eternal Dragon Nation. Qin Yu shook his head slightly. If he could subdue the top forces of the Heaven Domain, it would naturally be good. But Qin Yu wasn't interested in the ancient Imperial Hall and the other forces of the 7 great martial realms. Of course, Qin Yu naturally wouldn't repeat the same mistakes he had suffered in his previous life. Therefore, Qin Yu had the idea of establishing the Eternal Dragon Nation a long time ago. Imagine the scene of tens of thousands of dragons following the battle. How unparalleled would it be? Establishing the Eternal Dragon Nation? You don't plan to condense the origin dragon seal? The dragon's soul couldn't help but ask. Although the immemorial battle dragon art could devour dragon blood and obtain the divine powers of the dragon clan. But that required the condensation of the origin dragon seal. In other words, Qin Yu was using the immemorial battle dragon art to forcefully seize the divine powers of the dragon clan. From there, he could condense the dragon seal for his own use. Because of that, once the divine powers of the dragon clan were seized, their battle strength would be greatly reduced, and they might even die. If Qin Yu wanted to establish the Eternal Dragon Nation, he naturally couldn't condense the dragon origin dragon seal. In that case, the disadvantages seemed to outweigh the advantages. One had to know that Qin Yu's title of Dragon God Emperor in his previous life was because he had mastered tens of thousands of divine powers of the dragon clan. And if he didn't have enough battle strength, even if he established the Eternal Dragon Nation, he wouldn't be able to suppress the dragon clan. As long as I leave the origin dragon seal in the dragon clan's body. Qin Yu naturally had his own considerations in this regard. With the origin dragon seal, Qin Yu could completely control the dragon clan. If the dragon clan was dissatisfied, he could suppress them. If they wanted to rebel, he could also directly take back the origin dragon seal. Of course, Qin Yu had another concern when he wanted to establish the origin dragon nation. That was the origin dragon seal that had disappeared for some reason in his previous life. The origin dragon seal had merged with his soul, and his soul's memories had returned. However, the origin dragon seal had disappeared without a trace. This was something that Qin Yu couldn't figure out, and he was very concerned about it. While Qin Yu and the dragon soul were talking, they had already entered the ancient imperial city. Unauthorized personnel are not allowed to enter the venue of the semifinals. However, when Qin Yu approached the location of the second round, 2 guards with auras as vast as the ocean stopped him. The 2 guards in heavy armor were both half-martial progenitors.